to support a group that helps rehabilitate abused animals. As a dog owner, I care deeply about animals, and this seemed like a great cause. I had researched the organization and was moved by their commitment. After dinner, I went to the bar for a drink. The two main founders of the charity joined me. Over a few glasses of wine, we shared some success stories. These stories were heartwarming, but I still struggled to understand how anyone could treat animals so badly. Finally, I felt it was time to go. After they thanked me for my donation, I headed to my truck and drove home. You might be wondering why a multimillionaire like me drives a truck. Well, it's actually a nice pickup with leather seats and many cool features. I've always liked pickup trucks and didn't need a fancy sports car. I've never been one to show off and have lived a simple life with just me and my two dogs since my wife left. Yes, I was married once when I owned a landscaping company. At that time, I thought life was wonderful and believed my wife was happy too. Ironically, she left me the same day I learned I had won the lottery. That morning started off busy. I picked up the newspaper from the driveway and tossed it onto my truck seat as I headed to a job site where we were working on a big project. There had been some confusion with the crew the day before, and the foreman had called me to help fix things. I spent a lot of the day working alongside the crew, and by around 2 in the afternoon, everything was back on track. I told the foreman I needed to return to my office to make some calls. I arrived back at the office around 2:30 and checked in with the office manager I had hired. There were no serious issues, just a few calls to suppliers to confirm deliveries. By 3:30, I had a moment to relax and decided to check the numbers in the newspaper I had brought with me. I bought a ticket for every lotto drawing, but so far I had only matched 3 numbers, which earned me $3. I didn't expect much, but I enjoyed the chance with a $1 ticket. This week, I decided to try something different. Instead of my usual state lotto ticket, I splurged on a multi-state Powerball ticket because the jackpot was getting larger. I opened the page with the winning numbers and took out the ticket I had bought the day before. After sipping my soda, I laid the ticket next to the winning numbers and started comparing. When I saw that the first 3 numbers matched, I thought, great, at least I can cash it in for $1 profit. Then, I noticed that the 4th number matched too. Even better, this might be worth $50 or $60. I was shocked when I realized the first 5 numbers matched. Wow, this could be worth a nice amount, I thought. Then I checked the 6th number, and it matched as well. My hands began to shake. This ticket could be very valuable. Only 1 number to go the Powerball. For a few moments, I felt dizzy when I saw that the last 2 numbers matched. Once my head cleared, I double-checked and then looked again. It was no mistake. I had all the right numbers. The page said only 1 ticket matched them all, and I was holding it in my shaking hands. We were going to be rich, my wife and I. For the next 20 minutes, I sat at my desk, trying to process everything. First, I needed a financial advisor. Yes, that was important. I needed good advice for this big win. But first, I had to tell my wife the exciting news. I looked at the clock. It was a little after 4. She would be home soon from her job at the bank. This was news that needed to be shared in person. I quickly got up from my desk and rushed out to my truck, telling my office manager that I had to take care of something at home and would see her tomorrow. Jenny would be surprised to see me home so early since my workdays were typically long. She would be so happy to hear about the ticket. As I drove home, I imagined all the things we could do together, traveling and seeing the world. Oh yes, she would be in for a wonderful surprise. But the surprise was mine. When I pulled up to our house, I saw her with another man putting suitcases into a car I didn't recognize. What is happening? I wondered. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of my truck. Jenny, what are you doing? To her credit, she looked a little embarrassed. I heard her tell the man to wait in the car. She walked over to me and said, "I'm sorry, Michael, but I'm leaving." When she said Michael, I knew it wasn't good. She only called me that when she was upset or had bad news. Leaving? What do you mean you're leaving? Michael, I care for you, but I want more from life. I've met someone else who can give me what I need. I'm sorry. I left you a letter inside. I didn't want to tell you face to face. But Jenny, I thought you loved me. I thought you were happy. I'm sorry, she said softly, and ran to the waiting car, jumping inside. I stood there, stunned, watching them drive away. I felt so lost. I couldn't even think straight. For the second time that day, my vision blurred, and my head spun. I must have stood there for a few minutes, staring at where the car taking my wife had vanished. Shaking my head to clear my thoughts, I turned and staggered toward my house. Once inside, the first thing I did was head to the liquor cabinet. I grabbed a bottle of tequila and took a big gulp. I felt the burn of the alcohol in my stomach. Then I took another sip, and another. I must have finished a quarter of the bottle before I remembered she mentioned a letter. By now, I was feeling pretty dizzy and not ready to read it. It could wait. I made my way upstairs and fell into the shower. I stood there, letting the water flow over me until the hot water ran out. Then I looked for my friend in a bottle. Not even bothering to dry off, I found the bottle and fell into bed, hoping to escape with more alcohol. Finishing off another quarter of the bottle, I did just that. The next morning, I was in no shape to go to work. I called the office and said I had personal matters to take care of. Being the owner has its perks. With a spinning head and a queasy stomach, I shuffled to the kitchen and noticed a letter with 2 rings resting on top. The events of yesterday rushed back, and I ran to the sink, losing what little was left in me. With an empty stomach, I made my way to the coffee maker. I filled it and turned it on, then sat down at the kitchen table to stare at the envelope with the rings on top. "Oh, God," I moaned. "Where did I go wrong?" Still unable to reach for the letter, I waited for the coffee to brew. After 2 big cups, I finally picked up the envelope, moved the rings aside, and opened it. Inside was her letter telling me that she loved me but needed more in her life, along with a set of divorce papers she had already signed. I read the letter and saw that she had left everything to me except what she had taken. It was clear she thought our relationship was not worth saving, and she was moving on to something better. Fine. I hadn't shared much about my business with her, as she seemed uninterested. That should have been my first hint, but I figured she just didn't care about my landscaping work. Business was steady, and though we weren't wealthy, we were getting by. Maybe if I had told her about the buyout offer from a large national company, she wouldn't have seen me in such a bad light. Her letter mentioned that the man she left me for had a new job as a bank vice president in another state. They were leaving that same day and wouldn't be returning. She expressed her sadness about hurting me and said she cared for me, but she had to put herself first and hoped I would understand. Understand? What I understood was that I had married someone who cared more about money than real connection. If that was her choice, I would ensure she wouldn't know about my lottery winnings until it was too late for her to change the divorce terms she initiated. I would not let her come back to me, hoping for forgiveness just to get her hands on my money. That would never happen. She had shattered my trust and abandoned me for another man. There was no way I would ever take her back. As my sadness turned to anger, I started to think clearly again. The first thing I needed to do was safeguard my lottery ticket until I could cash it in. I went upstairs, then headed to the bank to put the ticket in my safe deposit box. While I was there, I closed our joint account and opened a new one just in my name. I did the same with our credit cards. Better to be safe than sorry. She might try to access our accounts. Next, I visited my lawyer. Although he focused on business law and not family law, he said he could file the divorce papers as long as I was happy with the terms. I also told him about the buyout offer from the landscaping company, and we discussed a few conditions I wanted to include before I decided to sell. He agreed to help me with the process. My last stop that day was to a real estate agent to list my house for sale. I wasn't sure what I would do once everything settled, but I knew I didn't want to stay in that house filled with memories of my failed marriage. It was no longer a home to me. It felt like a house that had once held happy memories from a time when I believed my life was perfect. Feeling ready to start fresh, I returned home to a warm greeting from my dogs. Their love was genuine. I fed them and took them for a long walk. I must admit that the smaller one was my favorite. She dashed around, sniffing everything, barking at butterflies, and then would run back to me looking for praise. Her playful behavior made me smile and helped me forget my worries, if only for a little while. After our walk, I went to my home office and checked my email to see if anything urgent needed my attention. I saw a few important messages, but decided they could wait until later. I chose to go to bed early since I was still feeling the effects of the previous night. I changed into my pajamas and got into bed, surprisingly falling asleep quickly. The following weeks went by quickly as I managed my business and worked through the process of selling it. In the end, I was pleased with the deal after they agreed to keep my employees for 6 months while they evaluated them. I was confident that most of them would keep their jobs since they were hardworking and well-trained. I stayed on for a 2-week transition period to help everyone adjust to the changes. The ownership change went smoothly, but my last day was filled with mixed feelings. My employees threw a farewell party for me, and I could see the sadness in their eyes, along with heartfelt handshakes and hugs. I had come to see many of them as friends, and it warmed my heart to know they would miss me. Overall, this process took nearly 3 months to complete. During that time, I accepted an offer on my house and agreed to move out within 2 weeks after closing the deal on my company. The last big issue left was my divorce. I met with my lawyer to see if we could speed things up. He was unsure, but would look into it. He reached out to the attorney who had prepared the divorce papers for my wife, who then contacted my soon-to-be ex. She was also open to resolving the divorce quickly, so both attorneys requested an early court hearing. As luck would have it, the judge was someone I had worked with in the past, helping with his landscaping, and he appreciated the extra efforts I had made. You never know when the kindness of a judge might help you out. The judge listened to both sides and agreed that they wanted to resolve the petition. He decided that since Jenny had left the marriage and moved away, he would grant the divorce in 1 week, unless there were any requests to change the terms in the divorce papers. By leaving, Jenny gave up her rights to any more of my belongings besides what she had taken with her. That was a big mistake. I had my own reason for wanting the divorce to happen quickly. I only had 6 months to claim my lottery winnings, and a divorce usually takes about the same time to finalize. Since the lottery drawing happened just a week before I filed the papers, I needed to cash in my winning ticket before the divorce was final. If the news got out, which it probably would because of the large amount I won, Jenny might try to change the divorce terms to get a share of the money or come back asking for another chance. A week later, with the final divorce papers in my hand, I felt relieved. It felt like a heavy burden was lifted off my shoulders, and I could finally move on with my life. That night, I called my sister. Mel, short for Melinda, was my only close family member. My parents had died in an accident when I was at college. Even though she was a couple of years older than I was, we had always been close. I had been avoiding calling her because she could tell when something was bothering me, and I didn't want to worry her about things she couldn't change. "Hey sis, it's me," I said when she picked up. "Mike," she said happily. "Oh, it's so nice to hear from you. I thought you might have forgotten your sister." "Sorry, sis. It's just that things have been a bit crazy here lately, but they're settling down now," I replied. Just as I expected, she could tell something was off. I sometimes thought she understood me better than I understood myself. But I could also sense when something was wrong with her, just by her voice. "All right, little brother, tell me what's going on," she said, clearly concerned. "I have good news and bad news," I said, pausing for a moment. "The bad news is that Jenny and I have divorced." I heard a sharp intake of breath from her end. "Oh no, Mike. What happened?" I then shared how I came home to find her with someone else, the brief conversation we had, and the letter with the divorce papers she left on the kitchen table. I didn't mention anything about the evening with the tequila. When I finished sharing my story, my sister responded, "That person. If I see her again, I'll really give her a piece of my mind." For the first time in a while, I actually laughed. I knew my sister and how much she cares for those she loves. I could easily imagine her doing just that. "Mike, I'm really sorry. I know you cared about her a lot, but you mentioned you have some good news. What is it?" she asked. "Before I share, I need you to promise me to keep it a secret for now. Don't say a word to anyone, even George," I said. George was her husband, and they had 2 lovely but sometimes wild daughters. I envied their strong bond. It was clear to everyone how much they loved each other and cherished their kids. "Mike, you know I don't keep secrets from George," she replied calmly. "I understand, Mel, but this is a personal secret. It will all come out soon. I just want to keep it low-key for a bit longer. Please?" I pleaded. With a sigh, she agreed. "Okay, Mike, I'll keep your secret. But you know I don't like it when I have to hide things from George." "I know, sis, but just for a couple of days. Anyway, I guess you heard about that big lottery jackpot a few months ago?" I asked. "Yes, I remember that. I even bought a ticket. I think only one ticket matched the numbers, but I never saw who won, she replied. After pausing for a moment, I said, well, I had to wait until my divorce was final before I could claim the prize. What? You mean you have that winning ticket? She exclaimed. I heard George's voice in the background. Is everything okay, honey? Yes and no, dear, she answered. It's Mike on the phone. I'll explain later, but he needs to talk right now. Oh, all right. Tell your brother I said hi. He's back in the other room now, she said softly. Mike, I can't believe you have the winning ticket. Believe it, sis, because I do. I'm planning to turn it in the day after tomorrow. I've been working with a financial advisor on how to manage the money, and I have a couple of last details to sort out tomorrow. I've sold my company and my house, so I have no ties here now. Would it be all right if I came to visit for a bit? I asked. Once again, I heard her joyful shout on the phone. Yes, little brother, we'd love to see you. Please come. Then I heard my nieces asking their mom if everything was all right. Yes, it's your Uncle Mike. He's coming to visit. This was followed by cheers from my nieces. As you can hear, we're all excited to have you here. How soon can you get here? She asked. Actually, I already have a plane ticket to Austin for the day after tomorrow. I planned to go to the Lotto office when they opened that morning. After I sorted everything out with them, I would catch my flight that was set to arrive at 7:15 Friday evening, I told her. I shared the details of my flight, and she promised to be at the airport to pick me up when I got there. That night, I went to bed feeling happier than I had in the last 4 months. I could not wait to see my sister and nieces. I was also looking forward to seeing George because we got along well. He was a good husband and father and made my sister happy. If she was happy, I was happy for her too. Finally, Friday morning came and I was outside the lottery office waiting for them to open. It turned out that claiming my prize was more complicated than just walking in with my ticket and leaving with a check. After finishing all the paperwork, I had to attend a press event. This was a big jackpot of over $265 million, and the Powerball Commission wanted to promote it. I chose the option to receive my winnings over 20 years instead of taking a lump sum. This meant I would get a little over $13 million each year for the next 20 years. This was a lot of money for someone from a modest background. I really wished my parents could have been around to share in my good fortune. Even after taxes, I would have more than enough. Once the press meeting ended, I declined any more interviews, saying I had a flight to catch. I made my way back to the motel where I had been staying since I closed on my house. I loaded my bags in the back of my truck and put the dogs up front with me. My first stop was at my old landscaping company to pick up Antonio. He was the first person I hired and had stuck with me through tough times when I was starting out. I planned to give him my truck and a bonus he didn't know about to thank him for his loyalty. Instead of going to the busy airport, we headed to a private one. I was lucky to find a charter flight to Austin that would allow my dogs to fly in the main cabin for an extra fee. I didn't want to check them in on a commercial flight where they would have to be alone in the cargo area. I just had to promise to keep them in their carriers during the flight. At the airport, I handed Antonio the keys to my truck and signed the title over to him. With tears in our eyes, we said our goodbyes. Just before he turned to leave, I handed him another envelope and told him it was for his years of service. I then walked toward the plane. Halfway there, I heard someone calling me from behind. "Patron, patron!" It was Antonio running after me. As he got closer, I saw the tears on his face. He wrapped his arms around me, almost knocking me over. "Thank you, patron, thank you." He had obviously looked inside the envelope and saw the check for $100,000 that I had given him. Standing tall and wiping his eyes, he simply said, "Go with God," and turned to leave. With a smile on my face, I got on the plane and took my seat across the aisle from the carriers holding my dogs. The pilot came back and told me the other passengers would be arriving in about 15 minutes, and we should be taking off right on time. I thanked him and opened my bag to take out a Sudoku puzzle book. Crosswords and Sudoku puzzles had always been my favorite way to pass the time when I had nothing else to do. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, a limousine pulled up next to the jet waiting to take us to Austin. I watched as a well-dressed man and a young girl, around 7 or 8, got out and boarded the plane. The pilot greeted them like they were old friends, making me think that this man had flown this route many times before. I heard him introduce the girl as his granddaughter, who had been visiting and was now going back home to Austin. As they took their seats, the older man nodded at me, and the little girl gave me a shy smile. I was seated in the back of the small jet, which could hold 12 people. I guessed it was because of the dogs, allowing the front part of the plane for the main booker of this flight. Once everyone was buckled in, the plane taxied onto the runway. When the pilot applied enough power and released the brakes, a small yip escaped from Susie, my tiniest dog. Hearing this, the little girl turned to look back with wide eyes, trying to find where the sound had come from. I smiled at her and leaned across the aisle, gently calming Susie, telling her everything would be fine. The carrier was set up so Susie could see me through the front grille. Hearing my voice, she settled down, though I could tell she was still a bit nervous. Once we reached cruising altitude, the pilot came back to say we could move about the cabin. As I got back to my Sudoku, I heard quiet chatter between the girl and her grandfather. A few minutes later, the girl stood up and cautiously made her way toward me. Stopping a few steps away, she looked up and said, "My name's Mary. Can I see your puppy?" "Hi, Mary. I'm Mike. I have 2 dogs. The little one in front is Susie, and that's Toby behind her," I replied. "You're welcome to talk to them if you'd like." With a big smile, Mary dropped to her knees in front of Susie and began talking gently to her. Both my dogs loved being around children, which I often thought about since Jenny and I had never had kids of our own. Susie, the little girl, stood in her cage, wagging her tail and making happy sounds. Lisa looked at me with bright eyes and said, "I think she wants to come out and play." I couldn't help but laugh a little. "I'm sure she'd love to play with you, but the airline asked me to keep her in her carrier." Mary thought about this for a moment, then rushed back to her grandfather. I could see they were chatting excitedly. Soon the older man came back to me holding out his hand. "I'm Tom Laughlin," he said. I recognized the name. He owned Laughlin Enterprises, a big company in the aerospace field. I shook his hand and said, "I'm Mike Johnson. Thank you for sharing your flight with me, Mr. Laughlin." He looked at me closely. I must have passed his check because he smiled and said, "Well, it's not really my plane. I use this service to book flights when I need to travel. It's easier than owning a plane that just sits around. Anyway, it seems my granddaughter is quite taken with your dogs." "Looks like it's a two-way street," I chuckled. "They're good with kids, right?" he asked. "Definitely. They love the attention. I know your granddaughter would like to play with them, but the airline made me promise to keep them in their carriers." Tom nodded and walked toward the front, talking to the pilot. The pilot nodded a few times and then headed to the back of the plane. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for following the rules about pets. We have this rule to keep other passengers comfortable. But Mr. Laughlin said we can make an exception this time if you assure me they won't bite." I laughed and said, "No, when they're excited, they might try to give you a lot of kisses, but they've never bitten anyone." Satisfied, the pilot went back to the front and spoke with Mr. Laughlin before returning to the cockpit. Mr. Laughlin leaned down and whispered to his granddaughter. She jumped up and hugged him tightly before rushing back to me, clapping her hands happily. "Grandpa says it's okay to let them out. Please, they must feel sad being locked up." All right, you win. Let's open their doors and let them out." The dogs seemed to know the little girl had helped them, and they happily showered her with playful licks. This made Mary giggle with joy. Watching the 3 dogs play on the plane made the trip feel shorter. Soon the pilot told us to return to our seats as we prepared to land. Before I put the dogs back in their carriers, Mary kissed each of them. We landed at a private airport close to where my sister lived, which made me happy. This way, she and her family wouldn't have to deal with heavy traffic or long waits at the commercial airport. As the plane slowed down, I noticed 2 SUVs pull up beside us. A couple got out of one, and I thought, they must be Mary's parents. From the other, I spotted my sister and her family. Needing to carry the dogs, I let Mr. Laughlin and his granddaughter go ahead of me. Before I left the plane, Mary dashed back to my seat and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Thank you for letting me play with your dogs, Mr. Johnson." "You're welcome, Mary, and thank you for making them happy." She giggled and took her grandfather's hand to go down the stairs. As I grabbed the pet carriers and headed to the exit, I could hear my nieces squealing outside. When I stepped out, I saw them jumping up and down, and Mary was doing the same. It was clear they were friends. Mary asked them what they were doing at the airport, and I heard them talking about their Uncle Mike. As I reached the bottom of the steps, they spotted me and quickly came running my way. I set the pet carriers down and knelt to scoop them into my arms. We exchanged quick kisses on the cheeks, and then both girls started talking so fast I couldn't catch a word, so I just smiled and nodded. "Girls, let your Uncle Mike breathe," my sister said. They giggled and backed up, making space for their mom, who hugged me tightly. "I'm so glad you're here, baby brother." "Me too, sis, me too." After a quick hug, George walked over and shook my hand. "I'm really sorry about Jenny. I can't believe she did that." "Neither can I, George. It took me by surprise," I replied. My nieces were bouncing with excitement. Finally, I heard something about the TV. "What's got you girls so excited?" I asked. "We saw you on TV just before we left to come pick you up. You were on the news," Jeannie, the older one, said. "Oh, no," I groaned. I hoped the story wouldn't go national. Lisa, standing with her family, asked why I was on TV, and my nieces tried to explain that I had won the powder ball. This made the parents laugh. Lisa's dad came over, congratulated me on my win, and mentioned they had seen the same story. After we introduced ourselves, we packed up and drove to my sister's house. The girls insisted I sit between them in the back seat, each holding one of my dogs. The trip was filled with laughter and playful conversation. I learned that my nieces and Lisa went to the same school, and that Lisa and Jeannie were in the same grade. Missy, as we lovingly called my other niece, was a year younger than Jeannie. I caught up on what had been going on with my sister and her family since I had last seen them. We had a good laugh when Missy asked if I had brought the ball that I had won. After a little explaining, she realized I meant I had won the lottery, and there wasn't actually a ball. Soon we arrived at their home, a spacious two-story ranch house. George worked for a local IT company and earned a good salary. My sister Mel ran a daycare center, which fit her well because she loved caring for children. Their house sat on 5 acres of beautiful Texas hill country. Although George's commute was a bit long, they felt it was worth it for the lovely surroundings to raise their 2 daughters. George helped me with my bags while the girls showed me to the guest room where I would stay. It was a cozy room decorated in a Western style with a private bathroom. Both dogs jumped up on the bed and settled in, much to my niece's delight. After I got settled and took a quick shower, I went back downstairs where the family was gathered in the den. I found a comfy chair, and soon 2 energetic little girls were climbing into my lap. "Girls, don't wear out your uncle on his first night here," Mel said with a laugh. "Let them have fun, sis. Honestly, I didn't realize how much I've missed you all. After the last 4 months, I think I've forgotten how nice it is to be with family." I hugged both girls tightly, making them squeal with joy. I looked at my sister and noticed her eyes were a bit teary. After about 20 minutes of tickling and giggling, Mel stood up and said, "Time for bed, girls. Come on, your uncle will be here in the morning, too." With some playful groans and eye rolls, the girls jumped off my lap, kissed me on the cheek, and raced to their rooms with their mother chasing after them. George and I relaxed in the calm and watched the news. Just as a story about my lottery win began, Mel walked back in. We sat quietly, watching the excitement surrounding my luck. Once that segment ended, Mel reached for the remote and turned off the TV. "So, little brother, now that you're a millionaire, what are your plans?" I sat there for a moment, pondering my next steps. Honestly, sis, I don't know. I've been feeling lost with everything that has happened, and I need some time to step back and figure out my next steps. It's been both a bad dream and a dream realized. If you can bear with me for a few days, I hope to get a better handle on things. Now my sister was crying, and it was her turn to sit in my lap. She wrapped her arms around my neck and rested her head on my shoulder, just like our mother used to do when I was young. George came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Mike, this is your home now," he said. "You can stay here as long as you want. Mel, I need to get up early in the morning. I'm heading to bed. Good night, Mike. I'll see you tomorrow." With tears in my eyes, I looked up at George. "Thanks, George. Your support means more to me than you know." Mel got up from my lap to join her husband. "That sounds good. I'll be there in a few minutes." George gave her a quick kiss and left. "I'm sure you're ready for bed too, little brother. I know you've had a long day." I stifled a yawn as I stood from the chair. "Yeah, sis, you're right. It really has been a tiring day. A bed does sound nice. But first, I want to thank you and George for being here for me. Don't be silly. Of course, we are here for you. You are family, and we love you. You can stay as long as you need to. Always remember, dear brother, as long as I have a home, you do too. Thanks again, Mel. Oh, one more thing. Now that I know the news about my win is out there, I'm a bit worried about Jenny. When I mentioned my ex-wife, my sister's expression changed. Don't worry, Mike. If she calls, I'll handle it. With that, we both turned in for the night. I felt more at peace now than I had in the last 4 months. It was good to be surrounded by family who cared. The next couple of weeks passed quickly. I spent my days relaxing, enjoying their pool, and using their home gym. This was important since my sister was a fantastic cook, and I knew I had to watch my diet. On weekends, George and I managed to go fishing, a hobby I loved but hadn't had the time to enjoy because of my old job. One morning as I was coming downstairs, I overheard my sister on the phone. Listen to me. I don't know where my brother is, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. All I know is that he said he was going on a long cruise and might be gone for a year. Please don't call here again. I gasped at her words. My sister usually never spoke that way, but she was fiercely protective of those she loved. Hearing my gasp, she turned around, her cheeks getting red. You were right, Mike. She clearly heard the news and is trying to find you. I hope she'll believe my small story about the cruise you're on and stop looking for you here. I apologize for my words. I laughed and hugged my sister. You handled that perfectly. You said exactly what I would if I could. As the days went by, I grew to love the hill country and wanted to stay close to my only real family. I hadn't shared this with anyone yet, but I started searching for a place to buy. One morning, while George and Mel were working and the girls were at school, I was enjoying a coffee at a local cafe when I overheard 2 men talking. One was sharing that he was planning to sell a piece of land he owned, and the other said that with lake access, it would sell quickly. Curious, I approached the man to ask about the land. Well, it's not far from here. It's 50 acres with lakefront access. Are you interested? He asked. I might be. I'm looking for a place to settle down here. Could I take a look? I replied. Sure, he said. In fact, if you're not busy, I can take you there now. My name is Jim Henley. Mike Johnson, I said, shaking his hand. Nice to meet you. I have plenty of time, so now works for me. We agreed that I would follow him, and we left to tour his land. I was pleased to see that we were only a couple of miles from my sister's place. When we reached a gate, he got out to unlock it, then returned to close it after I parked. He suggested that I ride with him while he showed me around. Sounds good, I said, turning off the engine and getting out. I climbed into his truck. First, we'll head up to a hilltop in the center of the property. It'll give you a nice view, he said. As we drove, he asked what brought me to this part of the country. I explained that my sister lived nearby, how I had come to love the area, and that I wanted to settle down here. I didn't mention winning the lottery. When we reached the spot he mentioned, we stepped out to take a look. He was right. The view was amazing. He pointed out the property lines and suggested we drive down to the lake. I was pleasantly surprised when he stopped at a small cove surrounded by rocky bluffs. The water is pretty deep here, he said. I've always thought this would be a nice sheltered spot for a boat dock, Jim said. I agreed as I looked around, imagining how a dock would fit in this place. On our way back to my car, Jim stopped a few more times to point out interesting sights. Then he let me out at the gate again and took out what looked like a business card, quickly writing something on the back. He handed me the card and said, "This is a rough idea of what I'm hoping to sell for. My phone number is on the other side. If you're still interested after thinking it over, give me a call." I shook his hand, thanked him for his time, and promised to call after I had a chance to discuss it with my sister and her family. After we parted ways, I drove back to my sister's house, feeling excited about the idea of buying this property. The thought of having a cove and a boat dock made it even more appealing, especially for fishing. That evening, I waited until just before dinner was over to bring it up. "I'd like to talk about something with all of you after we finish cleaning up," I said. Mel raised her eyebrows in curiosity. "Sure, Mike. We can head to the den and chat afterward. Girls, please help me with the dishes." George and I went to the den where I accepted a drink, and we chatted about the weather until my sister and nieces joined us. After my sister sat next to her husband, she looked at me and asked, "Is something wrong?" "No, not at all," I replied. "It's just that my time here with you has made me appreciate this area a lot. I'm thinking about finding a place to settle down here. I'm curious what you all think about that." My two nieces clapped and said excitedly, "Yes, yes!" "That would be wonderful, Mike," Mel said. "I was hoping you would stay." "Have you found a place you like?" George asked. "As a matter of fact, I have." I then shared my meeting with Jim and the tour of his property. George's eyes brightened when I mentioned the cove and how it would be perfect for a boat dock. He could also keep his boat there, which would be much more convenient than where he was currently docking it for a high fee. My sister shook her head, smiling. Boys and their toys. She and the girls enjoyed going out on the lake with George as well. After the girls went to bed, I asked if they knew someone who could help me figure out if Jim's price was fair since I wasn't familiar with property values in the area. Mel told me she had become friends with the real estate agent who helped them buy the house. She was sure her friend would be happy to talk with me. That night, I went to bed thinking about the kind of home I wanted to build. When Mel got home the next evening, she shared that she had spoken with her friend. The agent suggested we all visit the property this Saturday if I could arrange it with Jim. I said I would call him and check if he was okay with it. After dinner, I called Jim. "Jim, it's Mike Johnson. I've been discussing the property with my sister and her family. I'm interested, but I would like them to see it too. Can we tour it on Saturday?" "Well, Mike, my wife and I will be out of town visiting friends on Saturday. But if you meet me at the cafe in the morning, I can give you the key to the gate. You can take them out there any time. How does that sound?" "That sounds perfect, Jim. I'll see you in the morning." I told Mel about the key arrangement, and we all planned to go on Saturday morning. On the day of the visit, Mel's friend Renee drove over, and we all got into the SUV I had been using. We drove the 2 miles to the property, taking the same route Jim and I had gone before. We first stopped at the hilltop to enjoy the view. I found it just as beautiful as the first time. Everyone else was impressed too. Then we headed down to the little cove. George and I imagined how nice it would be to have a boat dock there while my nieces laughed and played by the shore. My sister had packed a picnic lunch, and we all agreed that the cove was a perfect spot to eat. While she and George set up the food, I talked to Renee about the price Jim was asking. She mentioned that it was a bit high, but considering the lakefront, it was reasonable. With that, I made up my mind. I would call Jim on Monday morning to begin the process. 2 weeks later, I was the proud owner of 50 acres of beautiful Texas hill country. I decided the hilltop with the amazing view was the perfect place to build my house. It was big enough for my plans. With Renee's help again, I looked for a custom builder. I met with 4 different builders before choosing one. I explained how I pictured the house. 2 stories with 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, dining room, living room, and a den game room on the first floor. The upstairs would have the master bedroom, an office, sitting room, and a home gym. Outside, I wanted an infinity pool overlooking the hillside with a matching hot tub. The builder listened to my ideas and a couple of weeks later presented a first set of plans. With just a few small changes, the final blueprints were ready and it was time to start building. My goal was to create an eco-friendly house. To do this, I made sure to use top-quality insulation and triple-pane windows. I arranged to have a wind turbine put up on a nearby hill and solar panels on the roof for energy. I planned to collect rainwater for drinking and set up a pump at the lake for watering the garden. The initial costs were a bit high, but I knew it would save money in the long run and help the environment. Over the next 10 months, I visited the site daily to see how things were going. During this time, I also learned about which plants would thrive in the area because I wanted to design the garden myself. The first part to finish was the floating boat dock, and George happily moved his boat there from the marina. Finally, the last day of construction arrived. After a final check, everything was approved, and all that was left was to complete the landscaping. I had hired a local company to handle that, and a week later, it was done. With my sister's help, we chose the furniture, and it was delivered and set up as the last step. She had great taste, and growing up together, she knew how to pick things that would make me feel comfortable. I was ready to move into my new home. It had cost a lot, and I used a big part of my winnings, but I felt it was worth it. Plus, it had almost been a year since I won, and my account would get a nice boost soon with the next payment. I had kept my sister and her family away during the final month of work because I wanted to surprise them with the finished house. The day came when I loaded my things into the pickup truck I bought after deciding to stay. Once ready, my sister and her family followed me. When we arrived, their faces showed how impressed they were. The house, made of wood siding and local stone, fit beautifully into the landscape. We took a tour of the house, and the girls were full of oohs and ahs. I showed them where their rooms were for when they visited. Then we went out to the back deck, which had a view of the pool and hot tub. George liked the barbecue I had set up. Wanting to have family close on my first night there, I convinced them to stay over. I knew they only lived 2 miles away, but it felt like a special occasion, and I wanted to share it. Mel took the girls to the store to help fill my kitchen with supplies I would need. I asked her to pick up some nice steaks because I wanted to try out my new barbecue. Everyone liked the idea. While they were away, George and I went to the boat dock to check his boat, then returned to my house. We sat on the deck with a couple of beers, watching my dogs running around and exploring their new home. I had made a big yard of about an acre around the house. To keep the dogs safe while still giving them space, I had a fence built. The pool and hot tub were also fenced, so I didn't have to worry about the dogs wandering in. A couple of hours later, the girls came back with bags of groceries. We spent about an hour bringing them into the house and unpacking. Mel had done a great job making sure I had everything I needed. I already had pots, pans, silverware, plates, glasses, and everything else delivered and stored away, so I was ready to cook. For lunch, Mel and the girls made us sandwiches and chips, and we ate outside on the deck. As it got warmer, my nieces wanted to swim. I told them to go put on their swimsuits, chuckling as I watched them happily skip away to change. While they swam, George, Mel, and I enjoyed margaritas on the deck, keeping an eye on my nieces. As the afternoon went on, Mel and I moved to the kitchen. She started making a salad and some side dishes while I got the meat ready for the barbecue. 45 minutes later, we all sat down to enjoy the meal. The steaks turned out great, if I do say so myself. After dinner, once we cleaned the kitchen, we headed to the game room to watch my nieces play video games on my new big flat-screen TV. "Mike, you've done a fantastic job with your home. You must be really proud," George said. "I am, but I couldn't have done it without all your help this past year. The credit for the lovely decor goes to my sister for her great taste." I noticed my sister blush as I said this. "I can never repay you for all your kindness." "Oh, baby brother," my sister said, her voice a little choked as her eyes got shiny. "What we did was out of love. It was a gift, not something to repay. I thank you both so much. Now how about we put the girls to bed and enjoy some time in the hot tub?" I suggested. So we did, spending an hour relaxing in the warm water under the stars. Eventually, we all agreed it had been a long day, and it was time to turn in. As I headed up to the master bedroom, I peeked in on my nieces, who were peacefully sleeping. I smiled as I saw each of them with a dog cuddled up beside them, fast asleep. I slept deeply that night and woke up later than usual to the delicious smell of breakfast cooking. I put on my robe and walked to the kitchen, where my sister was busy making a delicious breakfast. There were eggs, ham, sausage, hash browns, toast, and juice. It was a wonderful meal, and I felt happy in my new home. After breakfast, my sister and her family packed up to head back to their place. After watching them drive away, I went inside and noticed how quiet it was now. After nearly a year of living with Mel's family, being alone would take some time to get used to. Both dogs came over and sat by my feet, looking up at me. "All right," I said to them. "How about we go explore?" We spent much of the day walking around my new property, getting to know the area. A couple of weeks later, I received the lottery winnings for the second year. It was time to think about how to use my time and money. The past year had been busy with everything that had happened, especially building the house. Now I found myself with free time. I would still visit my sister and see my niece's soccer games, but I wanted to find something meaningful to do. I thought about donating some of my money to good causes. With that idea in mind, I started looking online for worthy charities. This brings me back to where my story begins. That is how I ended up at the charity dinner for animals in need. I had spent my first year in my new home finding good causes to support, often doing so anonymously. Sometimes I would attend events to meet new people. Although I felt lonely with just my dogs, and even though I visited my sister and her family often, I had not fully moved past the betrayal of my ex-wife. Because of this, I avoided seeking a romantic relationship. I just couldn't trust again. So I used these occasional events to get out and connect with others. As I drove home one night, I stopped at a red light under the freeway overpass. It was late, and I was eager to get home. Suddenly, over the sound of the radio, I heard a woman scream. Looking around, I noticed two men in the shadows who seemed to be bothering her. Without thinking much, I reached under my seat and took out my licensed firearm, which I was trained to carry. Holding it behind my back, I got out of my truck and carefully moved toward them. When I was about 15 feet away, I shouted, "Leave her alone!" One of the men turned and growled, "Mind your own business!" I said again, "Leave her alone!" This time, one of the men started walking toward me. "I told you to mind!" Before he could finish, I raised my gun and aimed it at him. "Whoa there, buddy! We were just leaving. Don't do anything hasty," he said quickly, stepping back. The other man saw the gun in my hand, released the woman, and ran away. As the sound of footsteps faded away, the man who had approached me quickly ran off. Noticing that there were no immediate threats, I tucked the pistol into my waistband and went over to the woman who had fallen to the ground, crying. I knelt beside her and spoke gently. "You should come with me. It might not be safe when those two come back." She slowly looked up at me and managed to say, "What?" "I said it's better if you come with me. I can help you find a safe place before they return," I replied. "But my daughter," she said, pointing up the hill. I squinted into the shadows where she was indicating and could see some dark shapes. Standing up, I walked toward them, and as I got closer, I heard a soft whimper. It was a young girl trying to hide behind some bags, looking very scared. I spoke softly again, trying to soothe her. "It's all right, sweetheart. Go to your mother. I'll take care of your things and help you get to a safe spot." The little girl jumped up and ran to her mother as I picked up the two bags. When I reached them again, I urged them to get into my truck. In a bit of a daze, they crawled into the passenger seat as I opened the door for them. I tossed the bags into the back of my pickup, jumped in, and quickly drove away. I wanted to leave before those men came back with more people. "Would you like me to take you to the police?" I asked. The mother gasped. "No, please, no police." "All right," I replied. "Is there another place I can take you where you will be safe?" She stared at the floor and shook her head. "What about a women's shelter?" I suggested again. "No, please. He might have someone watching there." "Who is he?" I asked, curious. "My boyfriend. He hurt me and scared my daughter." Even though I was unsure of what I was getting into, I felt I had to help them. "I know a place where you can be safe for the night. I'll take you there and we can figure out what to do in the morning." At least I knew my home would offer them safety for the night. Tomorrow in daylight, I would think about the next steps. The drive home would take about 40 minutes, even with light traffic at this hour. After 20 minutes, I glanced over at my passengers and saw they were both asleep. They looked exhausted, probably from a long time on the run. Another 20 minutes later, I pulled into my garage. As I turned off the engine, the mother sat up, looking around with fear in her eyes. "It's all right. This is my home. You'll be safe here tonight, I promise. No one can hurt you here." She studied my face for a moment, and then nodded as if accepting my promise. I understood that she had every reason to be cautious with me, but she had to see that this was better than what I had just rescued her from. I stepped out of the truck and went to the passenger side. As I opened the door, I noticed the woman softly shaking her daughter. "Lisa, sweetie, wake up. We need to go now." "Where are we, Mama?" "We're at a nice man's house. He is going to keep us safe tonight." She looked at me with hopeful eyes. "That's right, little one. Come on. Let's go inside and get you something to eat. I bet you're hungry," I said gently. She looked at me and nodded, then turned shyly back to her mother. "Okay, then. I'll show you the way. You two can follow me to the kitchen." I walked toward the house door and watched as they carefully climbed down from the truck. After shutting the door, they approached me slowly, looking a bit unsure. I opened the door and my two dogs dashed out, excited to see me. When Lisa spotted them, she squealed in surprise and hid behind her mother. But Toby and Susie happily bounced over to greet them. "Don't worry, Lisa," I said. "They just want to play. They love having kids around." Lisa peeked from behind her mother and saw Toby rolling on his back, legs in the air, wanting a tummy rub. Susie, noticing Lisa's nervousness, lay down and crawled closer. With her big puppy eyes, she was hard to resist. Slowly, Lisa stretched out her hand toward Susie. Just as she was about to touch her, Susie jumped up and gave Lisa a big, wet lick on the face, making her squeal. Susie ran in a quick circle around them and then lay back down, inching forward again. Having gotten over her surprise, Lisa started to giggle. She bent down once more, and again, just as their hands were about to meet, Susie jumped up and licked her again. This time, Lisa squealed with joy, laughing and clapping her hands. I looked at Lisa's mother and saw her smiling while she scratched Toby's belly, who clearly loved the attention. Susie then ran another circle around them, but stopped right in front of Lisa, happily panting. This time, Lisa leaned down, and Susie allowed her to pet her. I watched for a little while, then told the dogs to head into the house. I always took pride in how well they listened, and today was no different. They stayed just a few steps ahead as we made our way to the kitchen. On the way, I pointed out a bathroom and told my guests they could freshen up. I would meet them in the kitchen, which I also indicated. As I opened the refrigerator, I found a large pot of homemade chicken soup that Mel had brought the day before. I placed it on the stove to warm it up. I took out a loaf of French bread, sliced several thick pieces, and spread a lot of butter on them before putting them in the toaster. Then I went to the cupboards, got out 2 bowls and 2 spoons, and set them on the table. Just as the soup was starting to bubble, I heard my guests come into the room. "Have a seat, ladies. The soup is ready," I said. I used a ladle to serve the soup and took it to the table, placing it on a hot pad. One by one, I poured generous portions of soup into the bowls and set them in front of each guest. I then grabbed the plate with the toasted bread and placed it between Lisa and her mom. I asked what they wanted to drink. I had juice, milk, and soda. Lisa's mom asked for juice, and Lisa wanted milk. While I was serving the soup and drinks, I took a better look at the 2 women who had unexpectedly come into my life. Both looked a bit worn out, and I could see they hadn't been eating well. There was also a concerned look in their eyes. Lisa's mom seemed wary, as if she was looking for something unsettling. I sensed they felt shy with me watching them eat. "Ladies, I need to check my email. I'll be in the room across the way if you need anything. Enjoy your meal, and when you're finished, I'll show you to a room where you can rest," I said, stepping away so they could eat in peace. As I headed out, Lisa's mom spoke up. "Thank you, Mr. Mike. Just call me Mike. What's your name?" I asked. "Elizabeth, but everyone calls me Beth." "Well, Beth, I hope you enjoy the soup," I said, turning to leave the room. As I entered the next room, I heard Lisa telling Beth, "Wow, Mom, this is the best chicken soup I've ever tasted." Yes, it's really good," Beth replied. I smiled, knowing Mel would be happy to hear such praise for her soup. It was indeed much better than any from a can. I went into the game room where I had another computer, separate from the one upstairs in my office. Checking my email was just an excuse to give the ladies some space. Instead, I turned on the TV and caught up on some of the news of the day. About 30 minutes later, I heard the sound of running water from the kitchen sink. I got up and went to see Beth at the sink, washing the dishes they had used. I cleared my throat by the door to let her know I was there without startling her. I walked over to the dishwasher and told her to put everything in there. I then took the lid from the soup pot and walked back to the table. I felt happy to see a good amount of the soup gone. I knew they needed some good food. Beth smiled shyly as I picked up the pot to put it back in the refrigerator. "I hope we didn't eat too much of your soup. It was really good." I chuckled softly. "No, I'm glad you liked it. My sister made it and brought it over. She always makes too much, and it sometimes goes to waste before I can finish it." I glanced at Lisa, who was still sitting at the table, her eyes getting heavy. I could tell she was tired and needed some rest. Now that the kitchen was tidy, I said, "Ladies, if you will follow me, I'll show you to your room." I led them to the room that Mel and George used when they stayed over. It had a big bed and a bathroom attached. I asked them to wait a moment and went to the next bedroom where my niece Jeannie usually stayed. She often kept a couple of nightgowns here, so she wouldn't need to bring them from home. The girls had made it a habit to spend at least one weekend a month here, so my sister and her husband could enjoy some private time together. When I returned with a nightgown and a robe, I handed them to Lisa. "I think these will fit you. They belong to my niece, and she's about your size. Beth, I believe my sister has something in the closet over there for you. The bathroom is through that door. It has soap, shampoo, and clean towels. You can use the shower or the bath. There's plenty of hot water. Beth turned a little red, looking down, feeling shy about their situation. Oh, one more thing. You can lock this door for your comfort. If you need me for anything, my bedroom is at the top of the stairs, first door on the right. Good night, ladies. With that, I closed the door behind me and went toward the stairs, hearing the lock click. I smiled as I walked up to my bedroom, thinking about how they must feel in a new place with someone they didn't know. I got ready for bed, and then lay there, wondering what tomorrow would bring and how I would handle having unexpected guests. Eventually, I fell asleep. Beth. After Mike said goodnight and shut the door behind him, Beth quickly locked it. She couldn't stop thinking about what kind of man would take two strangers off the road and welcome them into his home. From what she had seen of his lovely house, she figured he must be quite well off. He seemed friendly, but she had been let down by men before. After he left, she looked around the room, amazed by the large king-size bed. She opened the bathroom door and gasped in surprise. It was as big as her last bedroom. Inside, she saw a walk-in shower and a nice bathtub. Turning back, she spoke to her daughter. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get you cleaned up and ready for bed." Lisa yawned and nodded, following her mom into the bathroom. Beth helped her get washed and dressed in the nightgown Mike had given her, then tucked her into the big bed. As soon as Lisa's head hit the pillow, she fell asleep. Beth went to the closet and found a modest nightgown and robe in her size. She returned to the bathroom, filled the large tub with warm water, then changed and let herself sink into the soothing heat. As she relaxed, her thoughts drifted back to earlier that evening. She remembered the two men who had approached her. This made her shiver, and she felt a wave of sadness. What would have happened to my daughter if they had found her? She thought. Thank you for sending Mike. As the warm water calmed her, she appreciated the rare moment to unwind. She knew it might be a while before she could enjoy a bath like this again. She guessed Mike would take them back in the morning. Finally, feeling drowsy, she got out of the tub, put on the nightgown from the closet, and joined her daughter in sleep in the lovely big bed. Mike. Being a creature of habit, I woke up early as usual. I went to the bathroom and got ready for the day. Then I headed downstairs to let the dogs out. My coffee maker was set to brew automatically, so I poured myself a cup and sat on the deck, thinking about the events of the previous night. I still wasn't sure what to do about my new guests. I knew I wanted to help them. Up until now, I had only donated to charities. I realized I hadn't done anything personally to assist others. I sensed that Beth had a hard time trusting men. I wasn't sure if she would feel comfortable talking to me. Maybe Mel could assist. A good conversation between women might help me understand more. I decided that after breakfast, I would call my sister. With that thought in mind, I started my morning jog around my property, which was part of my daily routine. I figured Beth and Lisa were so tired that they would sleep in. I was right, because when I got home, I could hear some soft sounds coming from their room as I went to take my shower. I washed up quickly, then got dressed and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. Making Denver omelets was my favorite. I gathered all the ingredients, including potatoes for hash browns, just like my sister taught me. I also started a pot of coffee in case Beth wanted some. Just as I flipped the first omelet, I heard the bedroom door open. The two ladies followed the delicious smell from the kitchen. I turned to see their heads peeking in. "Come on in, ladies. Have a seat. Breakfast is almost ready." I watched as their eyes brightened. Wearing robes, they walked to the table. Beth helped Lisa into a chair and then turned to me. "Is there anything I can do to help?" she asked. "Nope," I said with a smile. "I've got it all under control. Would you like some coffee?" "Oh, yes, please." I poured her a cup. "Do you like cream or sugar?" No. Black is perfect," she replied. As she sat down, I placed the third omelet on a plate and added hash browns for everyone. I set the plates on the table, then grabbed a glass of milk for Lisa from the refrigerator. "I hope you both enjoy the omelets. I think they are my specialty." They both took a bite and said, "Oh, this is good." With a smile, I started eating my own. We ate in silence, probably lost in our thoughts or just enjoying the food. Then little Lisa reached for her milk and accidentally knocked it over. She looked at me with wide eyes and her lip began to tremble. Beth jumped up to grab a dish towel, worry showing on her face too. "What's wrong with this child?" I wondered. She seems so scared. "Sweetie, it's okay. Don't worry. Accidents happen and I have more milk. We'll clean it up and get you another," I said gently. Lisa gulped and asked, "You're not mad at me, are you?" "Oh no, sweetheart. I'm not mad at all. And I promise I will never hurt you," I said, holding back my own tears as I saw how frightened she was. Beth looked at me with tears in her eyes and silently thanked me. I stood up and refilled Lisa's glass. The rest of breakfast went smoothly, and when we finished cleaning up the kitchen together, I asked if they had any clean clothes in their bags, which were still in the back of my truck. Feeling shy, Beth looked down. "No, we haven't been able to do laundry for a while." "Then let's collect what you have and take it to the laundry room to wash it," I said. I didn't want them to wear the dirty clothes they arrived in. I went to my truck to get their bags while Beth went to the bedroom to grab the clothes they wore last night. I guided her to the laundry room and set the machine for her. "When you have sorted the first load, just put them in, add a cup of this detergent, and pull this knob. While you do that, I need to make a couple of calls this morning." I left Beth to sort her clothes while I went upstairs to call my sister. Beth started sorting through the few clothes they had while her daughter watched from the doorway. "I think he's a nice man, Mama. He didn't even get mad when I spilled my milk." "Yes, dear. He does seem nice," replied Beth. However, she still felt uneasy. She had been through a lot and couldn't help but wonder if Mike had some hidden reason for being kind. Even if he dropped them off after they ate well and got clean clothes, she didn't know what she would do if he wanted more in return. But she knew she would do anything to protect her daughter. Mike upstairs, I called my sister and waited until George picked up. "Good morning, George. It's Mike. Can I talk to Mel?" "Good morning, Mike. Sure, she's in the kitchen. Let me get her." A moment later, my sister picked up the phone. "Hey, Mike, what's going on?" "Hey, sis, I have a situation here. Can you bring the girls and come over? I'll explain when you get here." "Sure, little brother. Give us about 20 minutes. "Thanks, sis." I hung up and went back downstairs to check on Beth and Lisa. I found them in the kitchen talking softly. "While we wait for the laundry, let's see if we can find you both something to wear. Beth, you should be able to find something in the closet of the room you slept in. My sister won't mind you borrowing something under the circumstances. And Lisa, we will find something for you in the other bedroom. My niece is almost your size." In Jeannie's room, we found a shirt, a pair of shorts, and some clean underwear for Lisa. I left the room while she and her mother went back to change. Soon they came out. The clothes Lisa picked fit her just right. Beth had on a sundress from my sister. It was a bit loose, but covered everything properly. "Let me show you ladies around while we wait for the washer to finish. Come outside to the back deck. I think you'll really like the view," I said. Beth and Lisa followed me to the back door and stepped out onto the deck. I could see they were both impressed. Susie and Toby, the dogs who loved to roam the yard in the mornings, heard us come out and rushed over to see what was happening. Lisa heard their barks and began bouncing on her toes with excitement as the dogs jumped onto the deck. She knelt down and squealed happily while the dogs crowded around her, showering her with playful affection. Beth and I found a spot to sit and enjoyed watching Lisa and the puppies play. Beth turned to me and said, "You have a beautiful home, Mike." "Thank you. I know many people prefer the city, but I enjoy the calm of living out here in the hills. There is so much beauty in nature if you take a moment to appreciate it." Beth looked out at the scenery, and I could see she understood what I meant. It was indeed a lovely and peaceful place. While Beth admired the view, I took a moment to observe her more closely. Her blonde hair, now clean and neat, lay softly on her shoulders. Her blue eyes, though still holding some concern, showed less tiredness after a good night's sleep. It was clear she had missed some meals. Overall, she wasn't bad looking. With some good food, she would really shine. A little while later, I heard my sister's car approaching. I stood up and said, "Beth, I will be back in a few minutes. If you or Lisa need anything to eat or drink, feel free to help yourselves to what's in the kitchen." I walked through the house and out the front door to greet my sister and nieces. After hugs, my sister asked, "Okay, Mike, what's the mystery you mentioned?" I told her about the events of last night and this morning. I ended with, "I'm sure they need help, but I'm not sure what kind. I sense that Beth doesn't trust men, and I think she might not be honest with me. I was hoping you could talk with her to find out what's going on. That way, I'll know how I can assist them. I thought if you brought the girls, they could keep Lisa entertained while you talked." My sister looked at me and smiled. "You've really become a caring person, haven't you, Mike? I'll help, but I want to be sure she isn't just looking to take advantage of you." "Thank you, sis. I knew I could count on you. I just hope you don't think I'm trying to take advantage of you." "Dear brother, even when we were kids, you never tried to take advantage of me. I know you care too much for that." I knelt down to speak with my nieces. "I want you two to meet a very nice girl. She's been through a tough time, and I think she could really use some friends. I know I can count on both of you to be nice to her, right?" The two girls just rolled their eyes at me. "For our mom's favorite brother, I think we can handle that," said Jeannie. "Thanks, girls. Wait a minute. Favorite brother? I'm your mom's only brother." Both girls giggled and ran toward the house. Mel and I exchanged looks, shaking our heads. When we entered the front door, we found the girls waiting for us just inside. I walked to the back deck first and said, "Beth, Lisa, I'd like you to meet my sister and my favorite nieces." My nieces gave me another eye roll, followed by laughter. I was their only uncle, and they were my only nieces. "This is my sister Mel, and these two are Jeannie and Missy." At that moment, both girls turned to me. "Hey, watch who you're calling Imp," said Jeannie, giving me her best fake pout. "Ah, I know you both love me," I said with a laugh. "Well, maybe just a little," giggled Missy. "Girls, this is Beth," I said, nodding toward her. "And the sweet girl over there is her daughter, Lisa." My nieces chimed in together. "Hi, Lisa." In a quiet voice, Lisa replied, "Hi." I could see that despite her shyness, Lisa wanted someone her age to connect with. "Why don't you girls take the dogs out in the yard and make sure they get some exercise?" My nieces and the dogs loved to play together. The dogs would chase the girls, and then the girls would chase the dogs. It was a game they never seemed to tire of. "Okay," said Jeannie. I watched as they ran over to Lisa, each taking a hand and leading her down the steps into the yard. "Come on, puppies," she called back. Soon the yard was filled with laughter as 3 excited girls and 2 playful dogs ran around. "Have a seat, Mel. Can I get you a cup of coffee? How about you, Beth? Would you like another cup?" Both ladies said they would love one, so I went back to the kitchen. I poured 1 cup black for Beth and 1 with a little cream for Mel. As I returned to the deck, I could hear the 2 mothers chatting about the girls. I handed Mel her cup, earning a big smile and a thank you. Beth offered a softer thank you with a shy smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, which made me think she might have some trust issues with men. For the next 15 minutes, we talked about the weather and other simple topics. Mel shared a bit about herself, her daycare, and her family. I could see she was trying to connect with Beth. I noticed Beth seemed to relax more and responded to Mel more easily than she did with me. When I mentioned how much Beth and Lisa enjoyed the chicken soup last night, I spotted a proud look in my sister's eyes. Beth happily agreed that it was delicious. Mel thanked her for the compliment. I felt it was the right moment to step away and let Mel talk to Beth and Lisa. They needed to figure out why Beth and Lisa were in their current situation, without a home and seemingly in trouble. "Mel, I need to check on the boat dock. I haven't been there in a few days. Would you mind keeping Beth company while I'm gone?" "Of course, little brother. I'm sure Beth and I can chat while you're away." "I thought I might take the girls with me. They love to explore the cove." "I'm sure they would have a great time," my sister replied. "Beth, is it all right if Lisa goes with the girls? I think she'd enjoy it." Beth looked a little worried. I could see how nervous she was about letting her daughter go with someone she barely knew. "I'm not sure," she hesitated. "Beth," Mel said gently, "besides my husband, I trust Mike completely to keep my girls safe. The boat dock is private. No one else will be there. I'm sure Lisa will be safe with him. How about we ask Lisa if she'd like to go?" Beth glanced back and forth between Mel and me, clearly weighing her options. "I suppose if you're really sure, if she wants to go, that's fine." I moved to the edge of the deck and called out, "Girls, do you want to come with me to the boat dock?" My 2 nieces jumped up and down with excitement. "Yes, yes. Can Lisa come too?" "Ask her and see what she says. She's welcome to join us." The girls hurried to Lisa, encouraging her to come along. "I don't know," Lisa said, her eyes widening at the thought of leaving her mother's side. "Mama said I shouldn't trust strangers." Jeannie giggled at that. "Lisa, he's not a stranger, he's Uncle Mike. Don't worry, he'll take care of us. You'll have fun down at the boat dock. We can skip rocks on the water. Please come." Lisa was unsure. She wanted to spend time with her new friends, but leaving her mother made her uneasy. In the end, she decided she wanted to join us. "Okay, I'll ask Mama, but I don't think she will say yes." The three girls ran back to the deck, Lisa standing in front of her mother while my nieces stood behind her. "Mama, is it all right if I go with Jeannie and Missy to see the boat?" "Please, please," chimed in my nieces, all giving Beth hopeful looks. "Lisa, are you really sure?" asked Beth. "Yes, Mama. Jeannie and Missy will take care of me." "Yes, Miss Beth, me and Missy will take care of her," Jeannie said eagerly. Beth turned to me. "How long will you be gone, Mike?" "We should be back in about an hour. That will give the girls time to enjoy themselves and be back for lunch." "Well, if you really want to go, Lisa, then I suppose it's okay." "Oh, thank you, Mama," Lisa exclaimed, hugging her mother tightly. With that settled, I said, "All right, girls, let's get ready. Take the little ones with you while I find my keys." The girls dashed to my truck, chattering with excitement as if I was taking them to a theme park. As they raced out, I turned to Beth. "She'll be fine, I promise. I'll bring her back if she's not happy." Beth nodded but looked worried, unsure if she made the right choice. It only took a few minutes to reach the cove. As soon as I turned off the engine, all three girls and two dogs jumped out, eager to play. I relaxed in the shade of a large oak, enjoying watching the fun. I loved seeing the girls and dogs play together. Occasionally, one of the dogs would come over and lick me, happy to be there. Jeannie and Missy would run over for hugs now and then. I noticed Lisa watching, wanting to join in, but I knew she needed to find her comfort level in her own time. I even let the girls take off their shoes and wade in the shallow water of the cove. As time passed, it was almost time to leave, so I asked the girls to put their shoes back on while I checked the boat. I saw Lisa mumbling something to the other girls. Soon they approached me. Jeannie and Missy stood behind Lisa. "Go on, Lisa. Ask him. He won't say no, I promise," Missy encouraged. Lisa lowered her head shyly and asked, "Can I see the boat, Mr. Mike? I've never seen one up close." I chuckled and said, "Of course, sweetie, but remember we have rules for the dock. You have to be very careful and no running around, okay?" "Yes, sir. I promise I will be careful." We all walked down to the ramp leading to the floating platform. I let Jeannie and Lisa go first so I could watch them. Lisa held on to Jeannie's hand tightly. This was a big adventure for her. I followed behind while holding Missy's hand. The girls had learned important boating safety rules from their parents. They knew that if they didn't follow those rules, they wouldn't be able to go out on the boat. The dock I built had spaces for 2 boats and a big platform with lockers in between. Each slip had a lift to keep the boat safe and dry when not in use. I asked the girls to wait on the platform while I started the motor to lower the boat into the water. Once the boat was ready, I removed the tarp and climbed inside. I called Missy over and helped her into the boat. Next, I asked Jeannie to bring Lisa over. I leaned out and gently lifted Lisa into the boat. I noticed her eyes get big when I first touched her, but I quickly set her down next to Missy. Finally, I helped Jeannie in. I took my seat in the driver's spot and told Lisa she could sit next to me. I spent a little time explaining the parts of the boat to her. She listened closely and nodded a lot. I knew we needed to head back to the house soon. I didn't want to make Beth worry more. "Okay, girls," I said. "I wish I could take you for a ride on the lake, but I didn't ask your moms if that was okay. We should get back for lunch." I stepped out of the boat and helped Jeannie first. I lifted her out and set her on the platform. Then I told Lisa it was her turn. This time she walked right over and let me help her to the dock. Lastly, I set Missy down. The 3 girls held hands and whispered among themselves while I covered the boat and used the lift to take it out of the water. Once everything was in order, we returned to my truck in the same line, with Jeannie and Lisa holding hands and Missy and I following behind. I got everyone loaded up and we drove back to the house. When I turned off the engine, everyone hopped out. But this time, the 3 girls waited for me. As I walked up, Lisa looked up at me and said, "Thank you, Mr. Mike. I really had fun." "You're very welcome," I replied with a smile. "I'm happy you enjoyed it." "Thank you, Uncle Mike. We had a lot of fun too," said Jeannie. and then she and Missy ran over to give me a little hug around my legs. "You're welcome, girls. Now let's go inside and let Lisa's mom know we're back safe. Then it will be time to get ready for lunch. How about I make some of my famous hamburgers?" Jeannie and Missy jumped with excitement, saying, "Yes, yes, yummy!" Missy turned to Lisa and proudly declared that her Uncle Mike made the best hamburgers in the world. We found Mel and Beth in the living room. I noticed Beth looked upset and had been crying. I glanced at my sister and she silently said later with her lips. I nodded in understanding. Lisa, still filled with excitement, ran over to her mom. "Mama, Mama, we had so much fun!" We got to throw stones and splash in the water, and then I let the kids sit in a boat. Beth looked at me with concern. "You took my daughter on a boat?" I raised my hands to calm her. "Hold on, I just let them sit in it. We didn't go anywhere. I didn't even turn on the engine. I stayed with them the whole time. I wouldn't take Jeannie and Missy anywhere without their parents knowing." Beth's expression softened a bit. "Oh, Mom, please don't be upset. I had a great time. Mr. Mike told me all the rules to keep me safe, and Jeannie looked after me, too." With those words, Beth's heart warmed. She pulled Lisa into a hug. "It's okay, sweetie. I'm not upset. I'm happy you had fun." Then she turned to me. "I'm sorry, Mike. I should have asked before I got worried." "That's all right, Beth. No harm done. I promised the girls I would make some burgers. How does that sound? Burgers for everyone?" Mel, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Oh, yes, Beth. You should try Mike's hamburgers. He really knows how to grill. How can we help you, Mike?" "Nothing at all, ladies. This is on me today. Jeannie, why don't you and Missy take Lisa to the game room? I know you can keep yourselves busy. You two can relax while I get things ready." Not waiting for a reply, I went to the kitchen. Mel looked at Beth and shrugged. I began preparing everything. I seasoned the meat with my special spices, sliced tomatoes and onions, and got the lettuce ready. I set out different kinds of cheese on a platter for everyone to create their own burgers. I opened a big can of baked beans and warmed them on the stove. After that, I took the patties and buns to the grill, lit it, and started cooking. While the burgers cooked, I sat on the deck sipping iced tea, thinking about how the day had gone and what Mel might have discovered about Beth and Lisa. Just before the patties were ready, I toasted the buns on the grill. I brought them inside and placed them on the kitchen counter. I got the platter of cheese and toppings from the fridge and poured the beans into a large bowl, placing it next to the patties and buns. I also set out mustard, mayonnaise, ketchup, and a selection of chips. Everything was ready. I peeked into the kitchen and called out, "Mel, Beth, can you please call the girls? Lunch is ready." Then I sat at the table to wait. It didn't take long before everyone rushed into the kitchen. "Okay, moms, you can help the girls make their burgers." Mel walked over to the counter, inviting Beth to join her. "You make one for Lisa. I will start with Missy. Missy, come here and tell me what you want on your burger." Soon everyone had their plates filled and was sitting at the table. I got up to make my own burger. I noticed everyone looking at me. "Eat up, ladies. Don't worry about me. I'll be right with you." As Beth took a bite of her burger, I heard her happily say, "Oh, Mel, you weren't joking. This burger is amazing." I couldn't help but smile at her compliment. I finished making my plate and joined the girls at the table. They chatted happily while I listened and enjoyed my food. Mel and Beth insisted on cleaning up, and I was happy to let them. Honestly, I prefer making a mess over cleaning it. While they cleaned, the younger girls and I went back to the game room. I settled into my favorite chair and watched the kids take turns playing a video game. I guess staying up late last night and getting up early today made me a bit tired, and I nodded off for a nap. The next thing I knew, I felt a hand gently shaking my shoulder. "Mike, wake up." I opened my eyes to see my sister smiling at me. I smiled back sheepishly. I guess I needed that nap. "Must be a sign you're getting old," Mel teased. "It's time for the girls and me to go home. Don't want George to worry." "Okay, sis. I'll walk you out." I stood up and stretched, then followed Mel to the living room. She and Beth said their goodbyes, and I walked with her to the car. Beth stood at the front door, just watching. Lisa and my nieces were already by the car waiting for Mel. "Okay, girls, get in the car. Your dad is waiting for us," Mel said. She turned and hugged me, whispering, "Call me when you can." I hugged her back and kissed her cheek. "Thanks, sis. I'll call you later." As I walked back to the house, I saw Lisa had run back to join their mom. They waved as Mel drove away, leaving me to think about what Mel might have found out. When I walked back inside, Beth said, "Your sister is really nice, and her daughters are adorable." "I really like Jeannie and Missy," Lisa added. "And I can see they like you too, sweetie. And yes, Beth, I agree, they are special people, not just because we're family. I don't think you've seen the game room yet, have you, Beth?" "No, I haven't, but I heard the girls talking about it." "Then follow me. I'll show you how to use the TV. Lisa already knows how to play the video games, and I have a bunch of board and card games too. I'll leave you two to have some fun together." I work from home, and I needed to spend some time in my office to take care of a few things. I took the girls to the game room, showed them where everything was, and then went back upstairs. In my office, I decided to check my email and respond to some urgent messages. I wanted to give Mel a chance to get home and talk to George since I knew he would wonder why I invited the girls over instead of him. I thought it would be easier for Beth, who seemed a bit unsure around men, if only the girls visited. After half an hour, I finished with my emails and was eager to talk to Mel, so I finally called her. Just like this morning, George answered first. "Hi, George, it's Mike," I said, knowing he could see my name on his phone. "Hello, Mike. What has Mel told me? You're picking up women and bringing them home now?" "Oh, come on, George, it's not like that," I said, trying to explain. I could hear him laugh. "If you say so. Hold on, I'll get your sister. I know she wants to talk." A minute later, my sister answered the phone. After some friendly chatter, she began telling me about her talk with Beth. She said Beth was a bit hesitant at first, but as they talked more, she opened up. Beth shared that her father had left her and her mother, making things really hard for them. Her mother worked 2 jobs until Beth finished high school. After school, Beth got a job and things improved for them. However, things changed when Beth fell in love and became pregnant with Lisa. When she told the father, he left town and never came back. After Lisa was born, Beth continued living with her mother and worked as a waitress to provide for herself and her daughter, who stayed with her mom while she worked. About a year ago, Beth met a new man. At first, he was kind to her and Lisa. Sadly, about 6 months ago, Beth's mother passed away and her boyfriend persuaded her to move in with him. That's when things started to get worse. He began to treat her poorly. Beth realized that he was being secretive about his money and suspected he was involved in something illegal. About a month ago, everything escalated when her boyfriend came home drunk. They argued and he became aggressive. Beth managed to grab Lisa and hide in a bedroom until he fell asleep. She took whatever they could carry and decided to leave. As she was leaving, she noticed some money on the floor that her boyfriend had dropped during their fight. She took it with her, and together, she and Lisa escaped. They managed to get to the highway where a truck driver stopped and offered them a ride to Austin. At first, they used the money she had saved, staying in inexpensive motels. But she couldn't find a job, and soon they found themselves without a place to stay. It was their second night under a bridge when I found them. Now she fears that her former boyfriend is still searching for them and may hurt her and Lisa if he locates them. "Wow, Mel," I said after hearing everything. "I understand why she doesn't trust men. If what she says is true, then she doesn't deserve what has happened to her. Now I need to think about how to help her and Lisa." "Mike, when I looked into her eyes while she shared her story, I believe she was being honest," my sister said. "Thanks again, sis. You really answered most of the questions I had about her. And please thank George for giving you the day off to help." After saying our goodbyes, I took a moment to think about what my sister had shared. I got up and went back downstairs. I felt it was time to figure out what to do next. A lot of that depended on Beth. I walked into the game room and saw Lisa watching cartoons and Beth reading a magazine. When Lisa saw me, she smiled. "You can keep watching your cartoons, sweetie. I need to talk to your mom in the other room, okay?" Lisa nodded and returned her focus to the TV. I glanced at Beth, who looked concerned, but got up and followed me to the living room. "So, Mike, what happens now? Are you going to take us back to where you found us?" Beth asked, worry in her voice. "Is that what you want, Beth? To return your daughter to the streets and face the same dangers as before?" I replied. Hearing this, Beth sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "No, I don't want that for Lisa," she said firmly. "But I don't know what to do. I have no family and nowhere to turn." "What would you like to happen, Beth?" "I don't know, Mike. I'm out of answers. I just want to stop running and feeling scared." We sat in silence for a moment before I asked, "Will you let me help you and Lisa?" Beth looked at me with doubt in her eyes. "Why would you want to help us, Mike? You don't even know us. What do you gain from this?" "First, Beth, I don't expect or want anything in return from you or Lisa. The truth is, I came into some money recently. For the past year, I have been helping others by donating to charities, but I haven't personally helped anyone before. You could say my motivation is a bit selfish. If I can help you and Lisa improve your lives, then I can feel good about myself. It's entirely your decision, Beth. I'm offering you help, but I can't force you to take it. Why don't you and Lisa talk it over and think about it? You can tell me your answer tomorrow. If you want my help, we can sit down and make a plan together. If at any time you choose to leave, you are free to go. The only thing I ask from you is to try your best for yourself and your daughter. If you don't trust me, I will gladly take you anywhere you want tomorrow and let you go. The choice is yours. I didn't sleep well last night, so I feel tired and I'm heading to bed now. You and Lisa can use the game room and help yourselves to anything in the kitchen. You know where to sleep. Good night." After saying this, I got up and walked upstairs to my bedroom, leaving Beth looking surprised. Beth watched as Mike went up the stairs. Could this really be true? Could Mike genuinely want to help her without expecting anything back? She thought about everything he had done since finding them. First, he had saved her from a terrible fate, and she worried about what might have happened to her daughter if things had gone differently. He brought them into his home, fed them, and gave them a safe place to sleep. She thought of his sister Mel and her daughters, who clearly admired Mike. He hadn't hinted at anything inappropriate or made any advances. In fact, he openly said he wanted nothing from her. Would it be so bad to accept his help? If he turned out to be like other men in her life, she could just take Lisa and leave again. But right now they had clean clothes, warm meals, and a cozy bed. And she was already seeing positive changes in Lisa after spending a day playing with kids her age. She made up her mind. She would accept his offer. She would still be careful around Mike, but she had no other options. This was worth a try, especially for her daughter's sake. Mike. In my room, I took a shower and then climbed into bed. I found it hard to sleep. My thoughts kept going back to what Beth had told Mel about her life. If it was true, and I had no reason to doubt it, I really hoped she would let me help her. I felt it was important for her daughter as well. I remembered something my sister had said. While we were away, she helped Beth in the laundry room. When Beth took out their clothes from the dryer, Mel noticed how worn they were. I decided that if Beth chose to stay, the first thing I would do is get new clothes for both of them. Then we would need to enroll Lisa in school, and I would have to ask Beth about getting her transcript. As these thoughts swirled in my mind, sleep finally took over. The next morning, I woke up at my usual early time of 6 a.m. I put on my jogging suit, let the dogs out, drank a cup of coffee, and headed out for my morning run. Unlike yesterday morning, I found Beth and Lisa in the kitchen when I returned. Lisa was sitting at the table watching her mother cook. When I walked in, Beth turned towards me. "I hope you don't mind. I thought I would make us breakfast this morning." "No, not at all. I'm just going to take a quick shower and I will be back down," I said as I headed for my room. I showered and got ready in record time. Dressing quickly, I hurried down the stairs back to the kitchen. My timing was perfect as Beth was just setting the plates on the table. I took my usual seat and looked over at Lisa. She gave me a shy smile and said, "Good morning, Mr. Mike." "Good morning, sweetie. How are you this fine morning?" "I'm good," she giggled. "And Beth, how are you this morning?" I asked. She smiled softly. "I'm good." Her response made Lisa giggle again. I then dug into my breakfast, which included 2 fried eggs, 2 pancakes, a side of sausage, and toast. It was really quite tasty. I must say, Beth, you have prepared a very nice breakfast. Your pancakes are wonderfully light and fluffy. You're going to have to show me how to make them like this. Beth could hear the sincerity in my voice, and I could see a glow of pride in her face. Note to self, Beth needs more compliments. I'm sure that is something she has missed for a while. Lisa was humming happily as she ate, which warmed my heart. When she finished, she looked up. "Mr. Mike, can I go outside and play with the puppies?" "That's fine with me, Lisa. But you should ask your mother." "Can I, Mama?" Beth thought for a moment. Okay, honey. Just be careful. I will, Mama, said Lisa, jumping up from her seat to kiss her mother on the cheek before heading outside. I looked over at Beth. She really is a sweet child. Yes, she is. I think I would have found it hard to keep going sometimes if not for her. She is the center of my life. We spent the next few moments in silence, sipping our coffee. Finally, I had to ask, have you made your decision, Beth? Yes, Mike, I have. I would be foolish to turn down your offer. For the sake of my daughter, I will accept. I still have some concerns about your motives, but for now, I choose to trust you until you prove otherwise. Noted, Beth, and accepted. I can understand your concerns. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a phone call to make, then I will help you clean up the kitchen. No, Mike. I will clean up in here. I want to feel helpful, please, she said. I could see she was serious. I felt her desire to contribute was a good sign. Okay, I'll be in the game room then. I left the kitchen, took out my cell phone, and dialed my sister's number. As usual, George answered. Hey, George, it's me again, I said when he picked up. Don't tell me, you want to borrow my family again? He asked. Well, if Mel is okay with it, yes, I do. But only if you're okay with it. All right, I'll let you talk to your sister, but you owe me. I heard him laugh before he called for my sister to pick up the phone. Hi, little brother. How's it going? She asked. Well, I made an offer to help Beth get back on her feet, and she said yes. Mike, you're a good man. I hope this works out. I had my doubts at first, but after talking to Beth, I think what you're doing is kind. I laughed at that. I wish she could see it that way too, but she doesn't trust me yet. Maybe in time. The reason I called was to see if you and the girls could take Beth and Lisa shopping for new clothes and anything else they might need. My credit card will cover it, of course. A day of shopping with a man's money. Let me think. Sis paused. Okay, count me in, have them ready, and we'll be there in about an hour. Thanks, sis. I love you. I know you do, little brother. See you soon. Now it was time to tell Beth and Lisa about the shopping trip. As I walked to the kitchen, I stopped at the door and looked inside. Like her daughter earlier, I could hear Beth humming a tune as she finished cleaning up after breakfast. I made a polite cough so Beth would know I was there. She turned around, her face flushing a little that I caught her humming. I decided to let it go. I just wanted to let you know that Mel will be here soon. She and the girls are going to take you and Lisa shopping. Shopping? Beth asked, surprised. Yes, shopping for new clothes, shoes, and anything else you might need. If you're going to let me help, you and Lisa will need these things. I could see Beth trying to swallow her pride. All right, Michael, if you say so. It was the first time she used my full name, and for some reason I liked it. Beth walked to the back door and called for Lisa. Lisa came running up out of breath and followed by my two dogs. Yes, Mama? I want you to come in now and take a bath and change into clean clothes. Mel and the girls are coming over to take us shopping, Beth said. When Lisa heard my nieces were coming, her eyes lit up. Jeannie and Missy are coming? Yay! Okay, Mama, I'll hurry and get my bath. With that, she dashed off to the bathroom. I stood there chuckling when Beth left to join Lisa. To pass the time, I went to the game room and turned on the TV to catch a football game. Neither team was my favorite, but I enjoy watching. About half an hour later, I heard the sound of little feet running towards me. Are they here yet? Lisa asked as she burst into the room. Not yet, sweetie. Just a little while longer. I changed the channel to cartoons and said, You can watch this until they arrive. Okay, she replied with a smile, sitting down on the couch. I smiled as I noticed her looking out the window, waiting for her friends. After a little while, Beth showed up, wearing one of Mel's dresses. Do you think your sister will mind if I wear her dress? I don't have anything nice to put on, she asked. I'm sure it's fine, Beth. Don't worry about it. Just then, I saw their car pull up, and Lisa jumped up, yelling, They're here! In no time, she dashed toward the front door to greet her friends. I turned to Beth and smiled. For the first time, she smiled back, lighting up her face. We followed Lisa outside to greet my sister and nieces. Once we said our hellos, we helped the three little ones into the back seat and Beth into the front passenger seat. My sister came over to me. Do you have any advice for me, Mike? She asked. I handed her my credit card. Just treat them to what they need. Hair, clothes, shoes, whatever you think. Take them out to lunch, and if you see something you like, add it to my tab. Just try to keep it reasonable, okay? My sister giggled and replied, Got it. A reasonable limit. Bye, little brother. With that, she turned and headed to her car. Mel, I called out. She simply waved and blew me a kiss as she got in and drove away. I shook my head and walked back inside. I might need to consider a loan with this spending. To stay busy, I worked out for 2 hours in my home gym. Then I went outside to play with the dogs. I made myself a nice salad for lunch and then went to the game room to watch some TV. By 5 o'clock, I was pacing, and as 6 o'clock approached, I started to worry. Just as I was about to call my sister, I saw her car coming up the driveway. Of course, I rushed back to the game room, quickly sat in my chair, and switched the channel to ESPN. While I sat there, I heard the front door open and the sound of laughter. Pretending to be uninterested, I stayed in my chair as my nieces and Lisa came into the room. My 2 nieces jumped onto my lap, laughing. Uncle Mike, we had so much fun, Missy exclaimed. Look at Lisa. She's got all new clothes and a new hairstyle. I turned to Lisa, who was standing shyly. She looked nice in her new outfit, and her haircut suited her well. My, I said with admiration. You look wonderful. Lisa turned red from my compliment. Thank you, Mr. Mike, she replied, with a shy smile. Mike. I looked up to see my sister Mel and Beth walk into the room. When I saw Beth, I was surprised. She looked different from earlier in the day. She seemed like a stunning new person. My sister noticed me staring, and I felt my mouth open in surprise. Mike, aren't you going to say anything? Mel asked. You look very nice, Beth, I managed to say, though I felt my face getting warm. Thank you, Michael. That's very kind of you, Beth replied, and I saw her blush a bit. Then Mel said, Get up, Mike. Go bring in their bags so the girls and I can head home. I gently put my nieces on the floor and quickly got to work. After 3 trips, I had moved everything to their room. When I returned to the game room, I told Mel that all the bags were inside. My sister stood up and told the girls to get ready in the car. She walked over to Beth, kissed her on the cheek, and said they would meet again later in the week. As she headed for the door, she asked me to walk her out. When we reached her car, Mel turned to me. Mike, I have to say, after spending the day with Beth and her daughter, they are very nice people. I think what you are doing for them is truly wonderful. I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged my sister and kissed my nieces on the cheek before heading back inside. As I stepped through the door, I could still hear Beth and Lisa chatting excitedly about their day. I went to the game room and told Beth that I had placed their things in their room. I'm going to bed now, I said. If you're hungry, feel free to help yourselves in the kitchen. I'll see you in the morning. I turned and walked quickly up to my room. Once there, I closed my door and sat on my bed. I had only known Beth for 2 days, but when she came in tonight, her beauty surprised me. I was shocked at my feelings. I reminded myself to stay calm. I didn't want to go through another difficult situation like with Jenny, my ex-wife. Beth and Lisa were just a project for me. I was here to help, not to get my heart hurt again. Beth felt a bit stunned when Mike announced he was going to bed. She and Lisa had enjoyed a lovely day with Mel and her daughters. They had a lot of fun together. But now that they were back at Mike's house, he seemed somewhat distant and uneasy. Beth started to worry that they had overstepped their welcome. She didn't want to spend so much money, but Mel had insisted. Mel could be very convincing when she wanted. The morning had been tense for Beth, but by lunchtime she and Mel were getting along really well. By the time they got back to Mike's house, Beth felt like she had known Mel for a long time. Watching Lisa enjoy herself with her new friends was wonderful. It had been a while since she had seen her daughter so happy. However, Mike's reaction when they returned surprised Beth. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but it was not the cold welcome he gave. She began to worry that he might ask them to leave, which would hurt Lisa since she had just made new friends. That night, Beth had trouble sleeping, tossing and turning, worried about what the next morning would bring. The next morning followed my usual routine, a cup of coffee and then a jog. I felt I needed to keep my relationship with Beth professional. It had been easy to avoid getting close to other women when I kept my distance, but having Beth in my home was different. I couldn't avoid contact. After my run, I found Lisa and her mother in the kitchen, just like the day before. "Good morning, ladies," I said as I walked in. Good morning, Mr. Mike, Lisa giggled. Good morning, Mike, Beth said quietly. I noticed Beth looked tired, but I didn't know she hadn't slept well. I'm just going to shower and then I'll be back down, I said as I went through the kitchen. While I showered, I wondered if something was bothering Beth. Being oblivious, I didn't realize it was about my behavior the night before. I decided to let her bring it up when she was ready. After my shower, I returned to the kitchen where my plate was waiting. I sat down and began to eat, occasionally glancing at Beth, who seemed unhappy and was picking at her food. I didn't want to pressure her into talking, so I waited until I finished my meal and leaned back in my chair. Beth? Now that you've accepted my help, we need to get Lisa enrolled in school. Lisa's eyes widened. School? Yes, young lady, school. At that, I noticed Beth look up at me with interest. Will I go to the same school as Jeannie and Missy? Lisa asked. Yes, sweetheart, you will. But I can't promise you'll be in the same class. We'll have to wait and see. Oh, okay. I looked back at Beth, who was watching me. What's up? I asked. It's nothing, she said, trailing off. It's nothing? Beth? No, really. You're right, Mike. Lisa does need to go to school. After saying this, Beth got up to clear the table. I stood to help her. I can do this, Mike. I thought this was a good time to talk about how we would work together in the house. Lisa, why don't you go outside and play with Susie and Toby for a little bit? I suggested. Lisa looked at her mother, who nodded. Once Lisa closed the door, I asked Beth to sit down. Beth, since we will be sharing this house for a while, I think we need to talk about a few things. First, I don't expect you to take care of everything while you are here. I would appreciate your help, but I can do my part too, including cleaning up after meals. Is that clear? Yes, Mike. Second, let's talk about where we will all sleep. Beth's eyes grew wide, but I stayed calm. You and Lisa are in the bedroom you're in now. There are 3 bedrooms downstairs. The other 2 share a bathroom. If you and Lisa want your own space, you can choose any room you like. It's up to you. I heard Beth breathe a sigh of relief, realizing I wasn't suggesting what she had worried about. My rooms are upstairs, and I'll keep them to myself. We will share the downstairs. I expect you and Lisa to keep your area clean. Those rooms are your private space. For the common areas, we should all help to keep it tidy. Do you agree? Yes, Michael. Hearing her use my full name felt nice. My ex used to say that only when she was upset with me. So far, I was pleased that I was keeping things professional. Maybe this would work out. Now, we should talk about getting you a job so you and Lisa can be independent. Do you have any ideas for work? Well, I have worked in a store using a cash register and as a waitress, she replied. Okay, that's a start. Do you want to do something more than that? I was still feeling proud of keeping things professional. I spoke to her like I had with past employees who needed some encouragement. But when I asked that last question, tears began to fall from her eyes. Oh no, I never knew how to handle someone crying. I want to do better than what I've done, but I only finished high school, and no one will hire me for anything else, she said, her words clear through her tears. Seeing her distress made me feel uneasy. All right, Beth, I'll look into some job options and then we can talk about it, okay? I said gently. Beth nodded, wiping her eyes. Let's tidy up the kitchen together, I suggested. We both got up and quietly put everything back in its place. Still feeling bad for making Beth cry, I said I needed to do some work in my office. Once I was in my quiet space, I thought about what to do next. It felt really unsettling to have upset Beth. In my old landscaping job, I mostly worked with men. The only woman I had hired was the office manager, and she was really tough, which she needed to be. I knew I had to talk to Mel. I called the daycare center and left a message asking my sister to call me when she could. I spent the next hour playing Sudoku on my computer until my phone rang. I quickly grabbed the phone, relieved to hear from her. Okay, little brother, what's going on? Why do you need to talk while I'm working? She asked. What? Can't I just call my big sister because I miss her? Stop joking, Michael. I made Beth cry and I feel terrible. I then explained what happened in our conversation that morning and asked her for advice. Mel got straight to the point, telling me that Beth wasn't my employee and I needed to be more caring. Her tone softened after that. I'll take some time off work tomorrow and meet you two at the school to help get Lisa registered. The vice principal is a friend of mine. I'm sure she'll help us out. After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair and was thankful for having a big sister. Since my divorce, she had helped me many times. I stayed in my office until lunchtime before heading downstairs. I found Beth and Lisa in the game room. Beth was reading while Lisa watched TV. "Are you ready for lunch? How about sandwiches and soup?" I asked. "That sounds good," Lisa replied. Beth just nodded. Lunch was a bit awkward with not much conversation between Beth and me. I mentioned that Mel would meet us at the school in the morning, but there wasn't much else to say. I think Lisa sensed the tension, glancing between me and her mother. After lunch, we cleaned the kitchen, and I returned to my office to handle important tasks. All right, I played more Sudoku. Dinner that night felt just like lunch, but with different food. After cleaning the kitchen again, I went back upstairs. I went to bed without going downstairs because I just didn't know what to say. The next morning, I decided not to go jogging. Instead, I went down and made breakfast for us. Beth looked surprised when she came into the kitchen. We had a quiet meal, mostly answering Lisa's questions about what we thought might happen at her new school. After breakfast, we all got into my truck and headed to meet Mel. My sister must have called her friend, the vice principal, the night before because they were quickly shown to her office. I decided to stay in the sitting area and counted the ceiling tiles. About an hour later, I noticed the outer door open, and my niece Jeannie came in. She saw me and rushed over to give me a hug. I raised an eyebrow at her. "Why are you going to the vice principal's office, young lady? Have you been causing trouble?" Jeannie just giggled and playfully slapped my arm. "That's for me to know and you to find out." Then she turned around and went into the inner office. A little while later, the door opened, and Jeannie walked out hand in hand with Lisa. Lisa led Jeannie over to where I was sitting. "Mr. Mike, I'm going to be in Jeannie's class. She's going to show me what to do," Lisa said excitedly. "That's wonderful, sweetie. I know Jeannie will look after you." "Bye, Uncle Mike. Come on, Lisa. It should almost be time for recess. We're going to have so much fun," Jeannie said, pulling Lisa out the door. Another 10 minutes passed before my sister and Beth came out of the vice principal's office. Mel walked over to me and said, "Mike, Beth is coming with me to see where I work. I'll drop her off this afternoon on my way home." The way my sister said it made it clear this was happening, and I wasn't going to argue. Both women left the office, and I watched them go. Then I walked out of the school and got into my truck to drive back home. On the drive, I thought about the situation I was in and what I could do to make things better. I knew things were tense between Beth and me. If that continued, I would retreat to the upstairs of my own home. I decided then and there that wouldn't happen. It was my home, and I wasn't going to let anyone push me away. Beth followed Mel to her car, feeling relieved. She had been anxious about the ride back home with Mike. When they had been alone together, Lisa had always been nearby. She didn't really think Mike would harm her, but she still didn't fully trust him. The men in her life had either left or mistreated her, making her wonder if she would ever trust a man again. During the ride to the daycare center, the two women talked about the school. Mel shared details about its academics, activities, and the Parent-Teacher Association. Beth was happy to hear that this school was one of the best in the state. She wanted Lisa to have a good education and dreamed of her going to college, something Beth never got to do. Beth was impressed with the daycare center. The building was a nice size, with different rooms for children of the same age to play and learn together. Each room was bright, clean, and had cheerful decorations. There were many toys and educational games for the children. Mel gave Beth a tour of the center, introducing her to the few women in charge of each room, who were Mel's staff. Beth saw a room that was empty and asked Mel about it. Mel explained that it was for older children up to 8 years old who would come after school until their parents could pick them up. Beth noticed that the lady caring for the infants looked a bit stressed, so she offered to help with changing diapers and feeding. Mel smiled, noticing how much care Beth showed for each child. She thought that hiring Beth could be good for both of them. At lunchtime, Mel told her employees that she was taking Beth out to eat. They went to a nice little cafe just down the street and sat across from each other in a booth. After they ordered, Mel decided to talk to Beth about a job. "Well, Beth, what do you think of the daycare center?" Mel asked. "Oh, I really liked it. You've done a wonderful job making it a great place for kids. I can only imagine how rewarding it is to take care of all these children. There are times when it can get very busy, and it's not the right job for everyone, but I do love it. I saw how well you managed with the infants today, Mel said, letting her words sink in. I was wondering if you would like to come work for me. Beth's eyes widened. Mike told you to do this, didn't he? To give me a job because he thinks I can't find one myself. Mel smiled and gently took Beth's hand. No, Beth. Mike did not ask me to hire you. He doesn't know anything about it. And I'm not doing this out of pity either. One of my full-time employees had to leave town to care for her mother, who had a stroke. The lady you met who oversees the 3 to 4-year-olds has agreed to help for a few days but isn't looking for a full-time job. I have seen how you are with Lisa and how you helped with the infants this morning. If you're interested, I think you would be great at this job, and I really do need the extra help. Beth's expression softened. Mel, I don't know what to say. Beth, there's one more potential benefit that might interest you. After school, my daughters take the bus that drops them off at the center. This way, I can keep an eye on them and spend more time with them, something I wouldn't usually get to do if I had a different job. If you came to work with me, Lisa could ride with my daughters and stay at the center until your shift ended. And since you would be an employee, it wouldn't cost you anything. I know this is sudden, so I can give you a day or two to think about it. No, I'll take the job. Oh, thank you, Mel. You don't know how much this means to me. Even though he's not directly involved, I think Mike will be happy that you found a job so quickly, Mel said. When Beth heard Mike's name, her expression turned serious again. Yeah, Mike. I just hope I can get back on my feet quickly. Okay, what's going on? Mel asked, looking worried. I don't think your brother is happy with me. I think he is upset about how much money we spent, Beth replied. Beth, trust me, Mike is not upset about the money we spent. Why do you think that? Mel asked. Well, after you left last night, he just came in, said he was going to bed, and went off. This morning he was polite but very formal. I think he regrets helping me and Lisa. I know money isn't the issue. If he's acting strange, it has to be something else, and I have a feeling I know what it is. Let me tell you a bit about my brother. If you're going to be staying at his home, you should know a little about him. You and Mike actually have more in common than you realize, Mel said. What do we have in common? Beth asked. He's wealthy, lives in a nice home, and has the love of you and your family. I'm homeless and broke, with only Lisa by my side, but I thank God every day for her. What you both share is that you've both been hurt by those you cared about. When Mike was in high school, he dated a girl he really liked and thought they had a future together. Then he found her with his so-called best friend. Mike was so upset that he joined the Marines right after graduating. He told me later he just needed to get away for a bit, and joining the military seemed like the best choice. He served for 4 years and then went back to school using the GI Bill to help pay for it. Mike studied gardening in college, and to cover some of his expenses, he bought landscaping equipment and started doing yard work on the side. He's always been honest and dedicated in everything he does. People spread the word about how well he worked, and soon he had more requests than he could handle, so he decided to hire someone to help. Before long, he had a team, and by his junior year, he had 8 people working for him and a successful small business. It was almost the end of his junior year when he met Jenny. Beth's eyes widened in surprise at the sharp tone in Mel's voice when she mentioned Jenny. She listened as Mel shared how Mike and Jenny dated until he graduated and then got married. Later, she explained that Mike had won the lottery but came home to find his wife leaving him. Mel continued, For the first year he was back, he focused on building his home. I thought he needed time to move on from Jenny. I didn't push him at first, but once he was settled, I encouraged him to go out. He strongly refused. He would only occasionally join George and me, and when he did, he made it clear to any woman showing interest that he wasn't interested. There are many women who like him. Mike is good-looking and has money. Like I said, you both share a common experience. You've both felt betrayal, and it makes it tough to trust again. I know this doesn't fully explain the feelings you think Mike might have about you, but it gives you some background. I promise you, my brother would never intentionally hurt you or Lisa. Beth nodded and took a moment to think about what Mel had said. Mel made a good point. While it didn't fully explain the feelings she thought Mike might have, it did give her a new perspective. If Mike truly wanted to help without expecting anything in return, that showed a noble side to him, especially since he struggled with trust. And even though she tried to avoid admitting it, Mel was right. Her brother was indeed a handsome man. After lunch, the two women went back to the center. Beth filled out her new hire paperwork and then joined in to help care for the children. Lisa was excited to ride the bus with Jeannie and Missy to the daycare center. She was overjoyed when her mother told her she would be working there and that Lisa would ride the bus every day with her new friends. Later that afternoon, just after 5, Mel called her brother. Instead of going straight home after Mel left with Beth, Mike decided to stop at the cafe for a coffee. There, he ran into Jim Henley. They talked about the property Mike had bought. Jim was interested in the improvements Mike had made, so Mike invited him over to see the changes, and Jim agreed. After they finished their coffee, Jim followed Mike to the house. Mike showed him around and then took him to the cove to see the boat dock. Jim was genuinely impressed with all the work that had been done. He left shortly before noon, saying his wife expected him home for lunch. Mike returned home, made himself a sandwich, and grabbed some chips and a soda. Then he went to his office. After eating, he turned on his computer to take care of some important tasks. Well, okay, he ended up playing Sudoku instead. A couple of hours of the same routine was enough for me, so I decided to take a long walk with the dogs. I got back home a little after 4 and started getting ready for dinner. I wanted to make a nice meal for Lisa after her first day of school. Just after 5, the phone rang, and I saw it was the daycare center. "Hi, sis," I said when I answered. "Hey, baby brother. Just wanted to let you know we will be home in a few minutes," Mel replied. "All right, sis. See you soon." I went to the kitchen to start making the sauce and boiling the noodles. I was cooking spaghetti because I figured Lisa would enjoy it. All kids like spaghetti, right? Just as I finished everything, I heard Mel's car pull up. A minute later, I heard the door open, followed by the sound of voices coming in. "I'm in here," I called from the kitchen. I heard little feet running toward me, and I turned to catch my nieces as they jumped into my arms. I gave each of them a quick kiss before noticing Lisa standing shyly nearby. "Hey, sweetie, how was your first day of school?" Lisa lit up at that question. "Oh, Mr. Mike, it was so much fun. Jeannie took me around to meet all her friends, and they were so nice. I think I'm going to really like this school. And then I got to ride the bus with Jeannie and Missy to the daycare. And then Mama told me." At that moment, Jeannie and Missy quickly said, "Shh, it's a secret, remember?" "Oh, yeah, but I still had a lot of fun," Lisa finished. I looked over to see my sister and Beth had come into the kitchen. Beth had a serious look while Mel smiled at me. "Come on, girls," said Mel. "Your father will be home soon, so let's get dinner ready." "Okay," both girls replied in unison. I bent down and got my usual goodbye kiss on the cheek from them. Then they ran over to Lisa and hugged her. "See you tomorrow, Lisa." As they dashed off to the car, I told Mel I would walk her out, and then let Beth and Lisa know dinner was ready if they wanted to wash up. I followed Mel outside. When we reached her car, I asked her, "What's this about a secret?" "Don't worry, Mike. If you are nice, Beth will tell you." "Oh, I see how it is. You won't keep secrets from George, but your brother doesn't get the same treatment." "Ah, little brother, this isn't a secret about us. It's Beth's secret." "Yeah, whatever," I replied, but I was smiling. I leaned in and gave my sister a kiss on the cheek before going back inside. Beth, Lisa, and I arrived in the kitchen at the same time. "Do you like spaghetti, Lisa?" I asked. "Oh, yes, Mr. Mike, I sure do," she said happily. "Then if you ladies will take a seat, I will bring it to the table." I had already set the table, so as Beth and Lisa sat down, I drained the noodles and placed them in a large bowl. I poured the sauce into another bowl and carried both to the table. I finally got everyone some drinks and took my seat at the table. Beth made a plate for Lisa, then served herself, and I followed their lead. We ate quietly for a bit until Lisa spoke up. "Mama, aren't you going to tell Mr. Mike the secret?" she asked suddenly. I glanced at Beth, hoping she would reply. She looked down at her plate. "I got a job today, Mike. I'll be working for your sister at the daycare center," she said. "Isn't that great, Mr. Mike?" Lisa added, looking excited. This news surprised me. "Yes, it's wonderful. Congratulations, Beth," I said. Beth looked at me with curiosity. "Thank you, Michael." She saw the look of surprise on my face and understood that Mel hadn't told me about her job. The rest of dinner was filled with cheerful talk about Lisa's first day at school. After we finished, Beth and I cleaned the kitchen together while Lisa went to watch TV. Once we were done, we joined Lisa again. I settled into my recliner and watched the Disney Channel with Lisa while Beth read on the couch. At 9, Beth stood up and told Lisa it was time to get ready for bed. Lisa got up and said, "Okay, Mama, good night, Mr. Mike." "Good night, sweetie. Sweet dreams." "Good night, Beth." "Good night, Mike," Beth replied as she left the room. After they were gone, I switched the TV to CNN and stared at the screen, thinking about the day. Lisa was starting school, and Beth had a new job. It was a big day for both of them. Even though I hadn't spent much time with Beth today, I felt a familiar feeling when I saw her. You can't let her affect you. You don't want to feel hurt again, I thought as I turned the TV off and went to bed, whispering good night as I passed their door. The next morning, I woke up early as usual. I decided to skip my morning run and went to the kitchen to make breakfast for the new schoolgirl and the working woman. Beth seemed surprised when she walked in and saw me serving their plates. I set the plates on the table, then brought Beth a cup of coffee and Lisa a glass of milk. My sister had said she would stop by to pick up Beth and Lisa, so I didn't have to worry about driving them. I wished both of them a good day and left for my run, telling Beth to leave the dishes for me to clean up later. But when I returned, the kitchen was spotless, and the house was empty. Mel had already come by and picked them up. I walked in and decided to have a bowl of cereal. While I ate, I thought about how Beth and Lisa needed a way to get around. I didn't want my sister to be their driver every day, even though it wasn't far. After I finished eating, I went upstairs to get ready to go out. An hour later, I was walking around a car lot looking at the vehicles. It was the same lot where I had bought my truck. The salesman who sold me my truck came out to greet me when he saw me. He asked if there was anything wrong with the truck. I told him no, but that I wanted to find a nice used car for someone special. I gave him a look to show I expected a fair deal. An hour later, I had made my purchase and arranged for it to be delivered. Happy with my choice, I returned home. Later that afternoon, the car was delivered. I asked them to park it in the driveway so Beth would see it when she returned. I went back inside, feeling good about everything. Lisa was in school, and Beth now had a job and a car. I planned to give her the keys when she got home. I felt proud of myself. A couple of hours later, I saw Mel's car pull up and went outside to greet them. As my sister stepped out, she noticed the car in the driveway. "Whose car is that, Mike? Did you have visitors?" No visitors. I realized Beth and Lisa would need a way to get around, so I bought it this morning for Beth." I looked at Beth, who was standing nearby, her eyes wide with surprise. "Mike, you shouldn't have. You are already doing so much for us." "Beth, think about it. You have a job and Lisa is in school. Wouldn't you rather have your own way of getting where you need to go?" I asked. "Well, yes," she replied. "Thank you, Michael." I handed her the keys and asked if she wanted to take it for a drive. Lisa thought it was a great idea and took her mother's hand, leading her along. As they drove off, my sister turned to me and said, "You're a good man, baby brother." "Aw, shucks," I replied. "I'm just being practical." My sister smiled widely, stood on her toes, and kissed my cheek. She and her girls then left to go home. I went back into the house to wait for Beth and Lisa to return. At dinner that night, Lisa and Beth chatted excitedly about the new car. I could see they were thrilled to have a way to get around without relying on me or Mel. After dinner and cleaning up the kitchen, Beth and I joined Lisa in the game room, me sitting in my chair and Beth on the couch with a magazine. I caught Beth looking at me a few times, and when our eyes met, she quickly returned her gaze to the magazine. I felt a strange flutter in my stomach each time our eyes connected. I tried to focus on the TV, but my eyes kept drifting back to Beth. Finally, at 9 o'clock, Beth and Lisa went to bed. After putting Lisa to bed, Beth lay there thinking about how much her life had changed. One day she was without a home, and now she was living in a lovely house, had a job, a car, and her daughter was in a good school. Then she thought about Mike. The times she caught him looking her way made her feel fluttery inside. She was so unsure. After everything she had experienced, how could she be feeling like this? Still thinking about Mike, she fell asleep. Mike. The next morning, I got up and went to the kitchen. Beth was already there, happily making breakfast. She was clearly excited. She could hardly wait to drive Lisa to school and herself to work in her new car. While we ate, I told Beth that this weekend I was watching my nieces so their parents could have some time to themselves. When I mentioned time to themselves, I saw Beth's cheeks turn a bit pink. Lisa, on the other hand, was very excited. "You mean Jeannie and Missy are coming to stay overnight?" she asked eagerly. "Yep, they will stay tonight and tomorrow night," I confirmed. "Yippee!" cheered Lisa. My sister had called to make sure I still wanted the girls to come over, and I told her I did. I knew Lisa would love having a sleepover, and Beth would likely enjoy a night with the girls. Later that afternoon, I was greeted by the excited voices of the girls. They were ready to have fun together. Beth seemed happy too. I grilled some of my famous burgers. Then, after dinner, I excused myself and went upstairs, telling the girls they could have their own party. From my office, while I played games on my computer, I could hear their laughter and excitement. It even made me smile to hear Beth joining in. It felt good knowing she was having a good time with the girls. The next morning, I asked the girls at breakfast if they had fun last night. They answered with huge smiles and nodding heads. After breakfast, they rushed outside to play with the dogs. Beth and I cleaned up the kitchen, then went to the deck to watch the kids play. We didn't talk much, but kept stealing glances at each other. After a while, I thought Beth might want some space, so I excused myself and went to the game room to watch TV. Around noon, the peacefulness was broken by little feet running in. "Uncle Mike, we're hungry," said Missy, climbing into my lap. I knew they had been running around and were ready for a snack. "You are?" I asked. "And what do you think I should do about that?" "Feed us," said Missy, hugging me. I chuckled and picked up Missy, tossing her over my shoulder as I headed to the kitchen. "Okay, come on, let's make lunch, you three." We decided on sandwiches and chips. Beth helped me prepare everything. Just as we were finishing lunch, Jeannie asked me, "Uncle Mike, can we go swimming in your pool, please?" "I think that will be great. It's really warm today," I said. "Lisa, do you have a swimsuit?" "Oh yeah, Mr. Mike." Beth and I had recently gone shopping and we bought new swimsuits for everyone. My daughter was excited and said, "Put yours on too, Mama, and come swim with us." Beth seemed a little unsure and looked flustered. I noticed she was hesitant about joining us in a swimsuit. To ease the situation, I asked her, "You can swim, right, Beth?" She nodded and I replied, "I've got some work to do in my office, so would you mind keeping an eye on the girls while they swim?" "Sure, I guess I can do that," she responded. There wasn't much left to clean up, so I told everyone to change and I'd take care of the kitchen. As I finished tidying up, the girls came out with their towels, ready for the pool. Beth had put on a light cover-up, which ended mid-thigh. I couldn't help but notice she had toned legs as she passed by. While they headed outside to enjoy the water, I went upstairs to check my emails and catch up on some work. I could hear the girls laughing through the window, which brought a smile to my face. After about 45 minutes, I decided to step out onto the second-story deck, which overlooked the backyard and the pool. As I did, I saw Beth getting out of the pool and walking over to one of the loungers. She wore a modest yellow one-piece swimsuit. She looked relaxed as she dried herself off with a towel and then applied sunscreen to her legs. Not wanting to intrude, I stepped back inside, giving them some privacy and turning my attention back to my work. Though distracted by my thoughts, I reminded myself to focus on the tasks at hand and not to let anything get in the way of being a responsible and respectful host in my home. As I continued my day, I knew I had to be mindful of boundaries and maintain a respectful distance. My feelings were my own to manage, and I resolved to keep everything professional and appropriate. No, if she even suspected, she would take her daughter and leave, knowing that I had betrayed the small amount of trust she had given me. After my shower, I got dressed and stayed in my office until it was time for dinner. I joined the girls for the meal, but I did my best to avoid looking directly at Beth. I felt guilty for how I had viewed her earlier. After dinner, I excused myself and told them to continue with their evening plans, then quickly retreated to my room. I went to bed early that night, hoping to clear my mind, but thoughts of the day kept me awake. Sunday morning, I woke up early, put on my jogging suit, and went for a long run. I needed to shake off the feelings that had overwhelmed me the day before. When I returned, the girls were finishing breakfast, and they had saved me a plate. I thanked them and told them I would eat after taking a quick shower. After 20 minutes, I sat down to eat alone while the girls went off to play video games. When I finished, I joined them in the game room to watch. At first, it was fine. I enjoyed seeing them have fun together. Beth wasn't interested in the games, so she sat on the couch reading as usual. I couldn't help but glance her way now and then. She was wearing a new sundress, and my thoughts drifted back to the day before. I realized I needed a break and mumbled something about going to the bathroom before heading upstairs. Once in my room, I tried to clear my head and refocus. Beth sat on the couch, quietly reading as Mike came into the game room. As always, Mike settled into his recliner, watching the girls with a small smile as they played. She found herself glancing at him from time to time, feeling a little annoyed with herself for noticing how good he looked. He had changed into a fitted shirt after his run, and she couldn't help but notice his strong, athletic build. Beth tried to focus on the article she was reading, but her thoughts wandered. She thought she caught him glancing at her briefly before he stood up, mumbled something, and left the room quickly. She felt confused, unsure of her own feelings and the sudden awkwardness in the air. Beth tried to distract herself, focusing on her magazine, but her thoughts kept drifting. She stood up and told the girls she was going to take a bath. They just nodded and continued with their game, not paying much attention. Beth quickly went to her room, locking the door behind her, and hurried into the bathroom. Once inside, she filled the tub and undressed before slipping into the warm water. She tried to relax, letting the calmness wash over her. Her thoughts kept wandering back to Mike, and she felt a mix of emotions she wasn't ready to deal with. After a while, she got out of the bath, dressed, and returned to the evening, feeling conflicted and confused about her emotions. Mike finished cleaning up and felt the need to clear his head. He splashed some water on his face, changed into a fresh shirt, and headed back downstairs. When he noticed Beth wasn't there, he figured she must have stepped out for a moment. He tried not to think too much about it, brushing off the lingering tension in the room. I had no idea that while I was waiting, she was feeling a mix of things alone. About 15 minutes later, Beth came back looking a bit warm but relaxed. She sat on the couch and mentioned something about taking a bath. That made sense since she looked a bit flushed. I felt more comfortable after easing some tension, but I still found myself stealing glances at Beth. Soon, Mel arrived to pick up the girls. We let her in, and she sat down next to Beth on the couch, thanking us for watching over the girls. I told Mel to thank Beth because I had been upstairs, and Beth had played hostess. I then asked my sister how her weekend was. She just looked at me and raised her eyebrows playfully. I laughed, and Beth turned a little red. After Mel and my nieces left, Lisa asked, "Mama, can we go swimming again? This time Mr. Mike can come with us." Beth looked at me and I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to join." I realized I was looking forward to seeing her in a bathing suit. I knew Beth was thinking about wearing a swimsuit in front of me, but little did I know that she was also curious about me. I finished getting ready before the girls and headed out to the pool. I had only been lying down for a few minutes when I saw them come out. Being polite, I got up to open the gate for them. As I walked over, I felt like Beth was checking me out. After my time in the Marines, I had worked hard to stay in shape, and I couldn't help but wonder if she was pleased with what she saw. Beth wore the same cover-up as the day before. After letting them into the pool area, I returned to my lounger. I was eager to see her take off her robe. To avoid being too obvious, I put on my sunglasses. Lisa dropped her towel on a chair and jumped into the water. I turned my head to pretend to watch her, but kept my attention on Beth instead. When Beth took off her cover-up and spread her towel on the lounger, I got a quick glimpse that caught my attention. Beth lay on her lounger enjoying the sun while Lisa played in the water. After a few minutes, Lisa called us to join and play with the volleyball I had. I stood up and dove into the water, surfacing at the far end of the pool. Lisa tossed the ball back and forth, and finally Beth, who had been soaking up some sun, decided to join us in the water. For the next half hour, we played with Lisa and had a lot of fun. The time together felt very much like a family, and I enjoyed it. I realized I would miss them when they finally left. Beth was the first to say she had enough of the water and was getting out. We had been moving around the pool, chasing the ball, and I was near the side, close to the loungers. Beth swam over to the side and held on. As she climbed out, I quickly looked away to avoid any awkwardness. I tossed the ball to Lisa and swam to deeper water just to stay out of the way. About 15 minutes later, Beth told Lisa that we needed to get out of the pool so we could have dinner and get ready for bed since tomorrow was a school day. We went into the house, changed into dry clothes, and had a quick dinner. While eating, Lisa asked her mother if she could sleep in the room Jeannie usually used. She said she wanted her own space, like Jeannie and Missy had at their house. At first, Beth seemed hesitant, but she eventually agreed. After dinner, we spent time in the game room until it was time for bed. I didn't stay up late this time. Instead, I went straight to my room, got into bed, and quickly fell asleep. After Beth put Lisa to bed, she returned to her room to get ready for the night. She had been a little unsure about letting Lisa sleep alone, but soon realized she was worrying for no reason. She trusted that Mike would never hurt Lisa in any way. As Beth got comfortable in bed, she thought about the day. She remembered how Mike had been kind and helpful when he held the gate for her earlier, and how she had noticed how fit he looked. His toned body from running and staying active caught her attention, but she quickly brushed off the thoughts. She drifted off to sleep, thinking back on the simple moments of the day, feeling content and at peace. Beth lay in bed, her mind drifting to thoughts of Mike. She couldn't help but imagine what it would be like if they were alone together. The idea made her feel warm inside, and she wished they could have had that time to themselves. She sighed, smiling at the thought, but as the feeling faded, she relaxed into her bed. She thought about the space they had, realizing that maybe there was an advantage to having some privacy. With that comforting thought, she closed her eyes and soon drifted off to sleep. Mike. As I lay in bed, my thoughts wandered back to the afternoon by the pool. I remembered Beth laughing, enjoying the sunshine and how carefree she seemed. Watching her move with such ease, I couldn't help but notice the way she carried herself, confident and graceful. Her smile was infectious, and the way she bent down to grab the ball made me chuckle to myself. My mind lingered on those moments, and I found myself getting lost in the memories. If only she felt the same way about me. I sighed, letting the thoughts drift as sleep took over. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and ready to start the day. After a quick shower, I headed down to the kitchen where I found Beth, humming softly to herself as she prepared breakfast. It was the second time I'd caught her in such a good mood in the kitchen. Lisa was sitting at the table, watching her mom with a smile. "Good morning, ladies," I greeted as I entered the room. "Good morning, Mr. Mike," Lisa responded cheerfully. Beth turned around, also greeting me with a bright, "Good morning, Mr. Mike," which caused Lisa to giggle. I couldn't help but chuckle along with them. Breakfast was light-hearted and not as tense as it had been in recent days, though there was still an unspoken connection between Beth and me. After breakfast, Beth and Lisa headed out for school and work, and I took the time to go for a jog, followed by a workout at the gym. Later, I treated myself to a quiet lunch at a small cafe in town, enjoying some soup and salad. It felt like a good way to clear my head. We had dinner together, and then went to the game room. Lisa wanted to play a board game, so Beth and I joined her, which made her really happy. After that, Lisa and the girls went to bed. The rest of the week was similar. Beth and I were starting to get along better now that we had more time together. I even found out that she had a good sense of humor when she let it show. Still, there was some tension between us. I felt it was because I liked her, and I guessed she still had some worries about trusting men. I especially enjoyed the nights when Lisa wanted to play games with us. We often sat on pillows on the floor. This gave Beth and me a chance to talk more, and since she usually wore dresses, I could catch glimpses of her legs while pretending to focus on the game. The next weekend, George and I went fishing while Mel, Beth, and the girls went shopping and then enjoyed my pool. I gave Beth a credit card for groceries and anything else she and Lisa might need. Even though she was still a bit unsure about spending money, I think she began to see that it was okay with me. Another week passed, and it was much like the last one. Some nights we played games, and other nights we sat across the room from each other watching a show with Lisa. Lisa seemed much more open with me. I think she noticed that I was good with my nieces, and that I wasn't a threat to her. One day, when Lisa brought home a picture she drew at school, I told her I had the perfect spot for it. I took her into the kitchen and used magnets to hang it up. I told her we could see it every day. I was kneeling down when I said that, and she replied, "Thank you, Mr. Mike." Then, she surprised both me and her mom by leaning over and giving me a kiss on the cheek. She giggled and ran out of the room. I touched my cheek, feeling like I wanted to keep the memory of that sweet kiss. I looked at Beth, who was standing by the table, and she just smiled at me before following after Lisa. I got a soda and sat at the kitchen table thinking about how quickly Lisa was settling into her new life. The kiss told me she was starting to trust me, and I wished her mother could feel the same way. I made it clear to Beth that her paychecks should go into a bank account, and for now, I would cover all the expenses. This would help Beth become financially independent faster. I figured it would take her about 2 to 3 months to save enough to look for her own place. If she wanted to move out before then, I told her I would help her with the rent until she was ready to take care of herself. Another week went by, and this weekend it looked like it would rain the whole time. On Saturday, Mel, Beth, and the girls went shopping for the upcoming week. I spent the day catching up on things I enjoyed, like solving Sudoku puzzles. On Saturday night, Mel and Beth took the girls to see the new Disney movie. I had other things to do, so I worked on crosswords instead of playing Sudoku. On Sunday, Beth spent the day doing laundry while I played games with Lisa. Then Monday arrived, marking the beginning of another week of school and work. Time flew by, and we settled into a cozy routine. Some nights we played games, which were my favorites, and on others we watched TV. Because the girls did their homework right when they got to daycare, we had our evenings free from that worry. It felt like I had my own family in a way, just without certain special moments. But my feelings for Beth were changing. I still thought she was attractive, and I remembered our day at the pool, but I started to feel more for her. The more time I spent with her, the more I realized what a great person she was. Being with her helped me move on from my past and the hurt from my ex-wife. I felt I was starting to heal, even though I wished it could be with someone who fully trusted me. Another change I noticed was how much my dogs loved Lisa. She was really gentle with them. When we watched TV, Lisa liked to lie on the floor, and the dogs would settle down beside her. They would do the same when we played games. They even started sleeping in her bed. Beth's days after that pool outing passed quickly. She enjoyed her new job taking care of kids, and having Mel as a boss was a blessing. As time went by, her friendship with Mel grew stronger. She felt that Mike no longer held any resentment over helping her and Lisa. In fact, she began to look forward to their evenings together, especially enjoying the game nights. She liked to wear a dress on those nights because she knew Mike appreciated it. More importantly, Beth started to see Mike in a new light. He was smart, funny, and kind. He would tease her every now and then, but it was never mean-spirited. He was always a gentleman. While he might glance at her legs, it was subtle, without any inappropriate remarks. He was great with Lisa, too, being loving and supportive, and it made Beth happy to see Lisa responding to him. At last, Lisa had a positive example of a man in her life, unlike her own father. Beth's feelings for Mike kept growing. He had come into her life during a tough time, supporting her and her daughter, and he made her feel hopeful about the future. Mike. It was Friday, nearing the end of the 3rd week since Beth had started her new job, when my sister called me at home. "Hey, little brother, how's your day going?" she asked cheerfully. I'd been busy looking into some charity organizations. "It's going well, sis. How about you?" "Everything's smooth so far, no big issues. Listen, George and I were thinking of taking you and Beth out for dinner tomorrow night. It's been a while since we've all gone out together. We even have a babysitter lined up for Lisa. What do you think?" I hesitated for a moment. "I'm not sure." "Beth." Mel interrupted me. "Oh, I've already talked to her and she's excited about it. She could use a fun night out." "Well, I guess that settles it," I replied with a laugh. "What time should we be there?" "How about 6? It'll be great to catch up." "See you tomorrow, Mike." With that, she hung up, leaving me to think about the evening ahead. I wasn't exactly going out with Beth. This was just dinner with my sister and brother-in-law. Beth had become friends with Mel, so it made sense that she'd be part of the plan. Nothing unusual about it. Beth didn't mention dinner when she got home that evening. Instead, she told me that she and Mel were planning to go shopping in the morning and asked if I could watch Lisa while they were out. I assured her that I had no problem watching Lisa and suggested we could head over to my sister's house together, letting Lisa play with my nieces while George and I spent some time together. That night, we played some games like we often did. Beth was wearing a dress that was a bit shorter than usual, and a couple of times, while shifting around to get comfortable, it caught my attention. I tried not to make too much of it, though, and focused on enjoying the evening. Beth was excited as she went to bed that night. It had been ages since she'd gone out anywhere fun, and the thought of tomorrow's dinner was really lifting her spirits. Mel had promised to take her shopping in the morning to find a nice dress for the occasion, which added to her excitement. That evening, she'd worn a dress that was shorter than she usually wore. She knew Mike had a habit of glancing at her legs, so she playfully teased him a little, just for fun. After dinner, she leaned over to Lisa and suggested they play some games. Lisa was all for it, so they all gathered to enjoy the night together. Beth shifted in her seat, adjusting herself now and then, knowing Mike might notice but not making too much of it. At one point, she thought she saw his eyes widen a bit, which made her suppress a smile. By the time Beth got to bed, she felt happy and excited about the evening ahead. Her excitement that night, thinking about how adventurous she had been and seeing Mike, was quite strong. Mike. The next morning, I woke up at my usual time and got to the kitchen before the girls. I started making breakfast, and my timing was good because just as I finished, the two of them came in, blinking and sleepy. After a cup of coffee, I noticed Beth seemed to wake up more and was in a great mood, laughing and joking. I could tell she was really looking forward to going out with adults that night, so I planned to be on my best behavior to make sure she had a good time. We arrived at my sister's house a little after 9. The two girls took off, telling us we would see them later. George and I were fine with that. We could spend our time watching sports while the girls enjoyed their time together. It was almost 4 when Beth and Mel came back. They had obviously enjoyed a day out and looked more polished. My sister is very attractive, and I could see George admiring her. Beth came in behind Mel, looking just as lovely. Once again, I felt a hint of envy for George. He had a wonderful life with a beautiful wife and loving daughters, and I was living with an equally stunning woman who had a daughter anyone would be proud of. But I often felt it was out of reach. Still, like a good friend, I put my best foot forward and told both women how beautiful they looked. They both smiled warmly at my compliment. Mel suggested we leave Lisa there for the night with the sitter while I took Beth home to get ready for their evening out. As soon as we got home, Beth disappeared into her room with her shopping bags. I went upstairs to shower, shave, and get dressed. I chose nice slacks, a light blue shirt, a dark tie, and a stylish jacket, then went down to wait for Beth. At 5:45, she stepped out of her room, and I was taken aback. She wore a lovely little black dress that was stylish and modest, yet showcased her figure beautifully. To me, she looked incredible. Beth laughed at the look on my face. "Do you like it?" she asked. "Yes, I really do. You look amazing," I said, hoping I hadn't said too much. But Beth just smiled and said, "And you look quite good yourself." As we headed towards my truck, I noticed her outfit with the stockings. I felt a rush of admiration for her. I adjusted myself discreetly before getting in the truck. I really liked this woman, even though I sensed that she didn't feel the same way, which made me a bit sad. But I was set on making sure she had a good time. We got to my sister's house at 6 o'clock and had a glass of wine before leaving for the restaurant. We arrived at a nice seafood restaurant and were shown to a round booth. The women took the inside seats, while George sat next to Mel, and I sat beside Beth. The dinner was delicious and the conversation was lively, but occasionally I noticed my sister glancing at me. I couldn't understand why she was looking at me like that. I was being polite and participating in the talk. After dinner, my sister suggested we go to a nice little nightclub nearby. It had a dance floor, and I knew she loved to dance with her husband. I decided to leave the choice up to Beth, who was clearly enjoying herself. Beth agreed right away, so off we went. When we got to the club, it was quite busy, but we found a table and ordered some drinks. Soon, my sister and her husband were on the dance floor, leaving Beth and me at the table. I really wanted to ask her to dance, but was worried she might say no. We chatted, and she told me she was having a great time. A little later, Mel and George returned. As she walked by, she whispered in my ear, "Ask her to dance." We kept talking, and when the next song started, I asked Beth if she wanted to dance. She smiled and took my hand, pulling me onto the dance floor. My worries about being turned down disappeared. I thought I could dance pretty well, but watching Beth was like seeing poetry in motion. During a lively song, I had plenty of time to enjoy her movements. When the next song turned slow, she smoothly slid into my arms, and holding her felt amazing. After that dance, we returned to our table. I walked behind Beth, hoping no one would notice my excitement. We sat and talked while Mel and George went back to the dance floor. I took Beth's hand to lead her out again. We danced a few more upbeat songs before she said she needed to visit the ladies' room. Mel, George, and I chatted while she was gone. Feeling like I should use the restroom too, I excused myself. The restrooms were down a short hallway. As I turned the corner, I saw Beth against the wall, clearly trying to avoid a very drunk man. I felt a surge of anger and marched down the hall to confront him. I grabbed the guy by his shirt and pressed him against the wall, ready to protect Beth. Just then, I felt her hand on my arm. "No, Michael. He's not worth it." Instantly, my anger began to fade. As I pressed him against the wall, I leaned in close and whispered, "You should leave now, or you'll see what happens when a very angry Marine is pushed too far." I then let him go. He quickly apologized and hurried away. Turning to Beth, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I had just shown her that I could be fierce, and she was already escaping a dangerous situation when I found her. Beth gently touched my cheek. "Thank you, Michael. You really are my hero." After that, she walked back to our table. I took care of some business in the men's room and returned to where we were sitting. No one spoke about what had just happened, but I noticed that Mel and George knew and greeted me with big smiles when I got back. Beth and I danced a few more times, and then I said I would get us one last round of drinks. I was almost at the bar when a charming redhead stopped me and began flirting. I felt a little flustered, trying to escape when suddenly a blonde and a brunette stepped between us. "Back off, he's with me." I couldn't believe it. Beth had said that. The redhead realized she was dealing with two women who meant business. She stammered an apology and quickly left. Mel turned to me saying, "That was rude of her. She knows you're with us, and to approach you like that was out of line." "Sorry if I interrupted your fun, Michael," Beth said with a shy smile. "Well, I think they've learned not to bother us," Mel replied to Beth. "We'll be at the table when you get those drinks, Mike." The two women walked back to our table, and I noticed George laughing. As I resumed my walk to the bar, I realized Beth's actions were part of a playful show. I couldn't help but feel nervous knowing that I was in love with her and wanted to be with her. After that, there were no more incidents, and I returned to our table with the drinks. The girls were still giggling about scaring off the flirtatious redhead. "Since you saved me from that distraction, we thought we'd return the favor," Beth laughed, clearly enjoying herself. "But if you want, I can go apologize and get her number for you." "No, that's fine. I'm not interested," I replied, knowing the only person I cared about was the blonde at our table. We finished our drinks and decided to call it a night. As we walked to the car, I felt we had enjoyed ourselves without going overboard, except for George, who had been the designated driver all evening. During the short ride back to Mel's house, the girls were in the back seat whispering and giggling, while I sat up front with George. Once we arrived home, we went inside to check on the kids and let the babysitter head home. When we checked in on the kids, we found them all asleep on the floor in sleeping bags in one bedroom. We quietly closed the door and returned to the living room. Mel poured a glass of wine for herself and Beth, while George and I had a beer. After a long day of shopping, dinner, and visiting the club, Beth was soon dozing off on the couch. We had already decided to let Lisa stay the night, and when we noticed Beth asleep, I whispered to Mel to bring a blanket. We gently laid Beth on the couch and covered her with the blanket. I got ready to head home. Mel wanted me to stay too, but I explained that I needed to go home to let the dogs out, and it was just a short drive in the quiet country night. As I drove home, I thought about dancing with Beth. The slow songs and holding her close made me realize that I had fallen for her. It would be hard to live in the same house with someone I loved but couldn't have. The longer she stayed, the more it would hurt when she and Lisa moved out. Maybe I should find a place for them now. I could help rent a nice place and pay a year's rent so they would have time to save and become independent. Beth had a long day. First, she went shopping with Mel and found the perfect dress, followed by a makeover. The look on Mike's face when he first saw her was unforgettable. She felt butterflies in her stomach again. Getting into his truck, she made sure he noticed her stylish outfit. She knew he might have reservations about women, but he was still drawn to her. Dinner at the restaurant was delightful. It had been a long time since she had a night out, and no one had taken her to a place like that before. As she watched Mel and George together, she felt a pang of jealousy. Their love was clear for everyone to see. Later at the club, dancing slowly with Mike was better than she had ever imagined. His strong arms around her felt wonderful, and she was lost in the moment. She realized she was really falling for this man. Maybe she and Lisa should move out soon to avoid more pain when Mike eventually wanted them to leave. But for now, she closed her eyes, sipping her wine and remembering the warmth of his arms around her. That was the last thing she remembered until she woke up the next morning, feeling a bit shy on Mel's couch. Mike. I woke up later than usual. I think all the drinks and the late night made me need more rest. I decided to skip my run and went downstairs for coffee and cereal. As I considered my feelings for a woman I couldn't express my love to, I felt confused. If I rented a place for Beth and Lisa, my sister might think I was trying to push them away. I didn't want to upset her. I had no other family and wanted to stay close to her. Even my nieces might be upset if they thought I was leaving their friend Lisa behind. I knew I needed to think this through carefully. A little before noon, Mel brought over a still shy Beth. As she walked in, she started to apologize. "Oh, Mike, I'm so sorry for falling asleep like that last night." I chuckled. "Don't worry, Beth. I know you had a long day. I hope you enjoyed your evening out." "Yes, I did very much. It was amazing. It's been so long since I went out, and that was the nicest restaurant I have ever been to." "Well, I'm glad you had a good time. That's what mattered," I said. "I need to shower and change, then I will make us lunch," she said as she headed to her room. Beth came back wearing the same black dress from last night, and she still looked lovely. I thought about telling her I'd be fine if she wore it all day, but I knew she might think I was being strange and leave with Lisa. Besides, seeing her in that dress again made it hard for me to focus. I couldn't be distracted like that. Well, I could, but I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. I helped Beth in the kitchen, and we prepared a quick lunch. Afterward, she and Lisa went out to meet Mel for grocery shopping. I didn't mind this because I was never fond of shopping, and I knew Beth would choose the foods they liked. They returned a little after 5, and by the time we put everything away, it was time for dinner. We watched some TV until Beth and Lisa went to bed. Tomorrow was Monday, the start of the school and work week. When Beth and Lisa got home Monday evening, we followed our usual routine, fixing dinner, eating, cleaning up, and then joining Lisa in the game room. When we arrived, Lisa had already set up a board game and was ready to play. We took our places and started the game. I found it hard to concentrate that night. I kept checking out Beth, noticing her legs and catching myself looking at her lips. Those lips I wanted to kiss. It was becoming harder to keep my feelings a secret. Somehow I got through the week without telling her how I felt. This weekend, my nieces were coming over again for a sleepover. On Friday evening, I was making spaghetti, which the kids loved, when I heard the door open and the cheerful voices of the girls. They rushed in and Beth followed behind. I gave Missy a hug and a kiss, then hugged Jeannie as well. Just as I turned back to the stove, little Lisa looked up at me. "Mr. Mike, can I have a hug too?" she asked with wide, eager eyes. I felt tears prick at my eyes. This sweet girl, who I would have been happy to call my own, wanted a hug. "Of course," I said, bending down to give her a big hug and a kiss on the cheek, just like I had for my nieces. She giggled, clearly delighted. "Thank you, Mr. Mike." Then she ran off to join my nieces in the game room. When I glanced over, I saw Beth standing there with tears in her eyes looking at me. I quickly turned back to the stove, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Beth said she would wash up and then help with dinner. I could tell her voice was also affected by Lisa's request. When Beth returned, we called the girls to the table. During dinner, I noticed Beth giving me a funny look. I was unsure of what she was thinking, hoping it was nothing bad. After dinner, the girls insisted I play games with them, which was different from last week. We all had a great time, and I even made popcorn for them. When it was time for bed, my nieces kissed my cheek, and this time, Lisa did the same thing. I saw Beth look at me with that same strange expression before she went to help the girls get ready for bed. I waited for a while, watching the news, but Beth didn't come back. Her bedroom door was closed when I eventually went upstairs. I hoped she wasn't too upset. On Saturday morning, everyone was still asleep, so I went for a jog. I ran for an hour and a half, and when I returned, I could hear the faint voices of little girls waking up. I hurried upstairs to shower and get dressed so I could prepare breakfast. When I got downstairs again, I found Beth already in the kitchen. She had everything under control and told me to grab a cup of coffee and take a seat while she finished. I did as she said and sat at the table watching her. For a while, she focused on the stove, but then she turned to look at me and smiled. I took that as a good sign that she wasn't upset. It wasn't long before we heard the sounds of the little ones coming our way. They entered the room one by one, each giving me a kiss on the cheek and saying good morning before finding their seats at the table. I noticed a small smile from Beth when Lisa mimicked my nieces by giving me a kiss on the cheek. Maybe this was a good sign. The girls wanted to go out on the boat, so I called George and got his okay. We headed to the dock. I helped everyone into their life jackets and set off from our cove to the main lake. Beth and Lisa had never been on a boat before. Lisa was excited, but I could see that Beth was a bit anxious. She mentioned she had never gone out on a boat. After about 45 minutes, I looked at Beth and saw that she was not only calm but having fun. I thought if I could teach her how to fish, it would be great. I wished our situations were different, and that she could feel for me what I felt for her. The weekend flew by with Beth and me having a good time with the kids and watching them play. Sunday arrived, and my nieces went home, marking the start of another week for the girls. On Monday morning, Beth's day went by quickly. She and Mel headed to the cafe for their usual lunch. Beth shared all the fun the girls had over the weekend and how much she enjoyed being on the lake in the boat. Mel thanked her for looking after her girls and then proposed taking Lisa for a weekend so Beth could have some time to herself. Beth, thinking about what Mel and George likely did during their alone time on weekends, softly said, "I wish." "What did you say?" Mel asked. Beth hadn't realized she spoke aloud. What? Oh, nothing, just nothing," she replied. Mel studied Beth closely for a moment. "No, Beth, it wasn't nothing. You said, 'I wish.' What do you wish for? Do you wish you could have weekends like George and I?" At that, Beth's eyes widened. "That's it, isn't it? And I don't think you'd feel that way unless you had someone in mind. Be honest with me, Beth. Do you have feelings for Mike?" Beth was taken aback, wondering if it was that obvious. She wanted to share her feelings, but was scared Mel would be upset since she was Mike's sister. Still, she needed to talk to someone. Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mel, but yes, I do. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I couldn't help it. Now I don't know what to do." "Don't apologize, Beth. This is great news," said Mel, smiling. "How can this be great? You told me your brother doesn't trust women. How can caring for a man like that be good?" questioned Beth. "Just listen. When you came to Mike's house a month and a half ago, how did you feel about men?" "I thought I could never trust or love another man again," Beth replied. "Okay, just one more question, Beth. I want you to think about it and answer honestly. If Mike loved you and wanted you and Lisa to be a permanent part of his life, could you love him back, be true to him, be open with him, and most importantly, trust him?" Beth sat quietly, thinking hard about how to answer that question. She realized she was not the same person she had been 6 weeks ago. She had moved from feeling afraid and hopeless to feeling differently. Mike had changed her outlook. The answer was clear to her. "Yes, Mel, I could. I do love him. But what's the point? We both know it's complicated." "You are very mistaken, my dear. I know my brother better than he knows himself. 6 weeks ago, he found it hard to trust women. But you have changed that, Beth. My brother is in love with you. I see it in his eyes whenever he looks at you. He is afraid to tell you. He worries that if he does, you might turn away from him. Beth, you both need each other. You want the love of a good man, and he needs the support of a good woman. I believe you are that woman. I never fully trusted his ex-wife. I was worried she would hurt him again. But I see the love you have for your daughter and how much you care for the kids at the center. It's real, and I know Mike cares for Lisa too. He would treat her like his own if he could. Deep down, I think you know my brother would never do anything to hurt you or Lisa in any way." Now that things were out in the open, Beth found it easier to talk to Mel. "What should I do? I want your brother to love me. I want to be by his side." I think we just need to encourage him a little. Over the weekend, one of the things that changed for Mike was his relationship with Lisa. Now when she came down for breakfast, she would kiss him on the cheek, and she would do the same before heading to school. The first thing she did when she got home was run to find him for a hug and a kiss goodbye for the night. Before bedtime, she would give him another kiss goodnight. Each time, his love for the little girl grew stronger, and he wished he could be the father she deserved. When Beth came home Monday evening, he sensed a change in her too. He knew nothing of the conversation she had with Mel, but she seemed different from last week. She looked for him to talk and met his gaze more openly. Previously, she had often looked down. That evening, she suggested playing Monopoly, so after dinner, Lisa ran to set up the game while Beth and Mike cleaned the kitchen. After they were done, Beth mentioned she needed to go to her room and would join them shortly. When she entered the game room, Mike noticed she had changed her outfit. He found himself admiring how confident she looked. As Beth sat down, the moment felt lighter and more inviting. I felt a strong urge and looked over at Beth. She had a mysterious smile on her face. I was unable to think clearly. Was she playing with me? The night before, she seemed restless, and as she shifted positions, she caught my eye multiple times. I noticed a small spot on her pants. I was eager for the evening to end so I could go upstairs and take care of myself. When it was time for bed, I felt like Beth was glancing at me as Lisa cleaned up the game, making sure her back was toward us and giving me a lingering look. On Tuesday morning, I woke up feeling confused about last night. I had to take a moment for myself before getting up. I showered and changed my sheets, planning to wash them after Beth and Lisa left for the day. That night after dinner, we watched TV. I was disappointed we didn't play a board game, but instead of sitting quietly, Beth seemed eager to chat with me about the day. Even without any surprises, it was nice to relax and talk. Wednesday was similar to Tuesday, filled with more TV and conversation. On Thursday evening, Beth said she wanted to play games again. I couldn't help but feel there was a hidden meaning in her words. Once again, she returned to her room first and came back wearing a short skirt. When she sat down, I caught a glimpse that surprised me. Unlike before, tonight she wore different clothes. I could see more than expected, and I felt nervous under the pillow I was hiding behind. As they went to bed, Beth made sure Lisa wasn't facing us, giving me a longer look than before. When Lisa came over and kissed my cheek to say goodnight, I was startled when Beth did the same. Her kiss felt intense. Just before leaving, she turned to look into my eyes. "I will see you tomorrow, Michael." The way she said my name sent shivers down my spine. I had never felt that way before. As soon as I heard her door close, I rushed to my room to calm myself down. I lay on my bed feeling so confused. Was Beth really interested in me? All the signs seemed to point to yes, and it was hard to ignore. I lay there thinking about her, and my thoughts became overwhelming. I reached down trying to calm myself down, but it didn't help much. Just before I fell asleep, I realized I needed to talk to my sister for some advice. I wanted Beth so much, but I was scared she would react badly if I told her. On Friday morning, I woke up as usual, put on my jogging suit, and went downstairs. To my surprise, Beth was already in the kitchen, and my breakfast was waiting for me. She was at the stove finishing breakfast for herself and Lisa. Just then, Lisa came in as her mom returned to the table. She gave me a kiss on the cheek, followed by her usual cheerful, "Good morning, Mr. Mike." After setting Lisa's plate down, Beth brought hers to the chair next to mine. Before sitting down, she leaned over, kissed my cheek, and repeated Lisa's greeting. This made Lisa giggle, and I felt a bit confused by their playful behavior. When the girls were ready to leave, I received another kiss on the cheek from each of them. If Lisa had not been there, I might have hugged Beth tightly and kissed her. I spent the next couple of hours in my office, feeling lost and bewildered about what was happening. Just before lunch, my phone rang. I noticed it was Mel's home phone. I was surprised to hear George's voice on the other end. He told me he had taken the day off to work on a project at home and asked if I could help him. I quickly agreed because I needed a break from my confusing thoughts. George was installing new baseboards in a couple of rooms. It wasn't tough work, but easier with an extra hand to help manage the longboards. Shortly before 5, George wrapped up for the day and I headed home. wondering what the evening would bring when Beth and Lisa returned. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Beth's car was already there, which was unusual since she typically came home later. When I entered the house, a wonderful smell greeted me. Beth called out from the kitchen, telling me not to come in but to go upstairs, shower, and then meet her in the dining room. I usually ate in the kitchen, so I was curious about what she had planned. After getting dressed, I made my way down to the dining room, where I saw the table set beautifully with lit candles. I took a seat, wondering what would happen next. Soon, Beth entered with 2 plates of food. What caught my attention was that she was wearing a lovely black dress that I remembered from the previous Saturday. As she set the plates down, she asked me to open a bottle of wine she had ready. I noticed a wine bucket and happily obliged her request. I wasn't a wine expert, but I could tell it was a good brand. I pulled out the chair for Beth and she sat down with a smile. Then, I took my seat across from her. Before we began eating, I asked, "Where's Lisa?" "She's spending the night with your nieces," Beth replied. "It's just the 2 of us tonight." There was something in her voice that made me wonder if she had something special planned. Dinner was delicious, and we enjoyed a light, fun conversation. Beth seemed happy and talked excitedly. After we finished, she cleared the dishes and we moved to the living room to continue chatting for about an hour. Eventually, Beth mentioned that she'd turned on the hot tub earlier and it should be ready now. She suggested I change into my swimsuit. Excited by the idea of relaxing in the hot tub together, I rushed upstairs to change. However, when I came back, Beth was still in her dress. "Aren't you going to change and join me?" I asked, a little puzzled. "Yes, of course. My swimsuit is underneath," she said, smiling as she led the way. "Don't forget to bring the bottle with you," she added with a playful glance over her shoulder. I grabbed the bottle and glasses and followed her outside. As we walked, I noticed how graceful she looked. When we reached the hot tub, I held the gate open for her. She told me to go ahead and get in first, so I slipped into the warm water, feeling the tension in my muscles start to ease. Beth, standing nearby, slowly began to untie her dress. My heart raced a bit, but I kept my focus on staying relaxed. Instead of the one-piece swimsuit I remembered from before, she wore a bikini that left little to the imagination. I cleared my throat, trying to stay calm as she hung her dress over the fence. "Is something wrong?" she asked, noticing my reaction. "No, not at all," I said with a smile. "You look great." "I'm glad you think so," she replied with a laugh as she slipped into the water. We spent the next 20 minutes talking, enjoying the warm water and the peaceful atmosphere. Then she took a deep breath and slid underwater. The soft lights from the hot tub illuminated the water, creating a calming glow. I sat quietly, unsure of what she was doing. I felt her gently tugging at my swimsuit, and though surprised, I went along with it, allowing her to remove it without a word. The evening was filled with laughter and light-hearted conversation as we relaxed in the soothing water, enjoying each other's company. Only her head broke the surface of the water, and she gave me a playful smile before disappearing beneath the surface again. I felt her hands under my thighs as she moved around. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by a rush of warmth and emotion as she made me feel connected and cherished. She came back up, smiling at me with a teasing glint in her eyes. "Sit on the edge, Michael," she whispered softly. I quickly got out of the water and sat on the edge of the hot tub. Beth stood up, waist deep in the water, and smiled at me, her energy warm and inviting. She stepped closer, resting her hands on my thighs, looking deeply into my eyes. There was something in her gaze that made me feel special, like we were sharing a deep, intimate connection. "It's wonderful, Michael," she said gently. I smiled back, grateful for the moment we were sharing. But as I felt overwhelmed with emotion, I asked her to slow down, feeling like I might get too carried away in the intensity of the moment. She looked up at me, still smiling warmly, and encouraged me to just be in the moment with her, savoring our connection. I felt a wave of peace and contentment wash over me as we continued sharing this closeness. Eventually, I felt the tension release, and we both seemed to relax in the quiet stillness afterward. Beth leaned back and took a sip of her wine, smiling contentedly. "Now that's what I call a sweet treat," she said with a wink. I slid back into the water and stood beside her, pulling her into a warm embrace. I could feel her heart beating against mine as we kissed gently, our connection deepening even further. We held each other close, enjoying the quiet moment of love and togetherness. I kissed her face softly, letting my lips trace along her neck and up to her ear, whispering something light and playful. She shivered with delight, letting out a quiet sigh of happiness. I lifted her and set her gently on the seat in the hot tub. Her smile told me everything I needed to know. I reached out and tenderly held her close, brushing my fingers across her skin with care. Our shared laughter and the warmth of the water made the moment feel perfect, filled with love and joy. Michael and Beth stood close together, feeling the connection between them grow. He looked at her, admiration in his eyes, appreciating her beauty. Beth smiled softly, and they shared a moment of quiet affection. He leaned in closer, whispering, "You're incredible." She sat down, allowing herself to relax in the moment as he moved closer, his heart racing with anticipation. There was a deep bond forming between them, a sense of trust and closeness that they had never felt before. Michael was drawn to her, and the two shared an intimate connection, enjoying the simplicity of being together. The evening grew cooler, and Michael gently lifted Beth into his arms. She nestled against him, feeling safe and warm. They moved inside, climbing the stairs to the bathroom where they stepped into the shower together. The water washed away the day's stress, and they took turns helping each other clean off, the experience tender and caring. After drying off, Michael carried her to the bed. They lay down side by side, sharing kisses, each one filled with warmth and affection. Beth reached out and they moved closer, a feeling of unity building between them as they expressed their love quietly with no need for words. As they lay there, close and content, Beth whispered, "I love you, Michael." He smiled and replied softly, "I love you too, Beth." "Hold me close," she whispered, her voice soft and filled with emotion. She trembled in my arms, overwhelmed by the moment. I could feel her breathe deeply, almost as if she had lost herself for a second. I just held her gently, letting her regain her composure. When she looked into my eyes again, there was a warmth in her gaze. "Thank you, my love," she said softly. "Anything for you," I replied. Her lips curved into a smile and she pulled me into a tender kiss. As we parted, she stared into my eyes once more. "I really do love you, Michael, with all my heart." Hearing her say that brought tears to my eyes. I could see the honesty in her words, and it touched me deeply. "And I love you, Beth, with all my heart." Tears welled up in her eyes, too, and we held each other tightly. The closeness we shared in that moment was comforting, and our embrace naturally turned into more soft kisses. We fell asleep together, wrapped up in each other's arms, and woke up peacefully the next morning feeling refreshed. After waking, we showered together, laughing and enjoying the simple time spent with each other. Beth then wrapped herself in a robe and said with a smile, "I want to make breakfast for you." Her words filled me with warmth. I followed her to the kitchen, watching as she moved around, smiling back at me from time to time. It was moments like these that made me realize just how lucky I was. After breakfast, she sat in my lap, playfully kissing me all over my face, filling the room with light-hearted joy. I gently held her close, and we shared quiet, intimate moments, simply enjoying the connection we had built. "Oh, you beautiful woman, I love you so much." We spent the next hour cuddling, happy just to be together. Finally, we got up and cleaned the kitchen, stopping for hugs and kisses in between. Then we went to the game room and sat on the couch. "What time is Lisa coming home?" I asked. "She is spending another night with your sister. We have all day and night just for us." "Oh, that's wonderful," I said, playfully tickling her, which made her laugh. When I stopped, she gently hit my arm. "Stop that. Be nice to your woman." I laughed and replied, "I plan to be very nice to you." She looked into my eyes and pulled my head down for a sweet kiss. "I just have to ask, when we were playing games and you wore those short skirts?" She blushed, giggled, and kissed me again. "Yes, Michael, I knew what I was doing. I wanted you to notice me, but like a clueless man, you made me do all the work. My love, I have to admit I might be a bit clueless, but I was just afraid of pushing you away." "I know, darling, and I love you even more for it. I realized you would never hurt me." I must admit I was very attracted to you, and I always will be. But know this, I love you. I told Beth I needed to use the bathroom and headed that way. On my way back, I heard her talking on the phone. Oh my God, Mel, it's even better than I imagined. I was in love with him yesterday, and even more today. He is amazing. If I'd known how wonderful he was, I would have approached him sooner. I heard Beth giggle. Yes, Mel, I know he's your brother. I won't share details, but he's my man now, and I'll do everything I can to keep him. Thank you for guiding me to him. I will always appreciate it. I made a sound to let her know I was coming in. Beth looked up and said, Here he is now. Would you like to talk to him? She held the phone toward me. It's your sister. Hey, sis, how are you? I listened to my sister, then replied, You better take care of who? I'm not sure what you're talking about, teasing her with a wink at Beth. Beth? The one who lives here? Well, I did give her a place to stay, so I guess you could say I am taking care of her. This earned me a playful swat from Beth, and I chuckled as I pulled the phone away from my ear when my sister started to raise her voice. Finally, she quieted down. Mel, just so you know, I love Beth very much, and I will do everything I can to make her and her daughter feel loved and safe. And now, if you don't mind, I'm feeling quite affectionate, I said before hanging up the phone. Beth burst out laughing. She jumped into my lap and kissed me excitedly. Oh, my love, I hope you show me your affection often, I playfully growled at her. I dropped to my knees in front of the woman I loved, wanting to make her feel good. I moved closer, trying to please her. She became more excited, and I added my fingers to help. She pulled me closer, and we were lost in the moment, our surroundings fading away. Finally, she leaned back and gasped, and I felt a rush of energy. I was very excited and knelt between her legs. At first, she said no, but I continued, fully caught up in our feelings. Then her words changed. Yes, Michael, I love you. Take me. We reached a wonderful ending together. Only when we calmed down did we notice we were not alone anymore. Another boat had come into the cove, and we heard applause nearby. 2 women were watching us, and one said it was the most amazing thing she had ever seen. She jokingly suggested that if Beth tired of me, she should send me over. Without a hint of shyness, Beth stood confidently and said, Ladies, no one else is getting my man unless I'm gone. Her bold words brought another round of applause. The 2 women then started to leave. Beth laughed and turned to me. I raised my eyebrow, unsure of what to say. It looks like I need to keep an eye on you, I said. She smiled, and I pulled her into a warm embrace. My heart and soul belong to you. You have nothing to worry about, I reassured her. Good answer, she replied, giving me a fierce kiss. We got dressed and made our way back to the dock, then headed home. After having a light dinner, we retired to bed. As we lay together, I asked her about what would happen when Lisa came home. We both understood what I meant. Well, she goes to bed early and will be up before her, so I don't think it'll be a problem. I'll just have to be quieter. But what about you? Would it bother you if she found out? Beth asked. No, not at all. I'm just worried about her feelings. I would hate to hurt her, I replied. Another kiss followed, and I was glad I said the right thing. Sweetheart, we'll handle things as best as we can when the time comes. You've won my daughter's heart just as you have mine. She has never been as open with anyone as she is with you, she said. We were both tired from our day together, and we shared a gentle moment together before falling asleep. The next morning, we woke up together and shared a quiet moment before having breakfast on the deck. We both missed Lisa, so I suggested to Beth that we pick her up. We called Mel to let her know we were on our way. As we walked to the truck, Beth got in and gave me a playful smile. I chuckled and shook my head, feeling the lightheartedness between us. On the drive, Beth snuggled up close to me. We chatted as we headed down the road, enjoying the peaceful morning. About a mile from my sister's house, I remembered a quiet road nearby. I decided to pull over to stretch for a bit. We laughed and joked with each other, enjoying the playful mood. After a moment, we got back into the truck and continued our drive, excited to see Lisa. When we arrived at my sister's house, we held hands and walked up to the door, feeling happy to spend the day together. I never imagined it could be like this. I smiled and said, I just hope they're half as good as you say. Trust me, they are and more. Beth's hand moved and touched me gently. What are you planning to do with this? Listening to her words made me feel excited. Actually, I thought I would lie on my back and let you get on top, I replied. I would love to take charge. I lay back, and Beth situated herself above me. As she leaned back and lowered herself, I let out a soft sound. We shared a special moment together, feeling close and relaxed. Later, knowing she had work in the morning, I rolled her over and went to the bathroom. I returned with a warm cloth to clean her up. Then I slid into bed and held her as she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, we got up early and showered quickly. I asked Beth to help Lisa get ready for school while I made breakfast. Lisa came into the kitchen, dressed and ready, and ran to me for her morning hug and kiss. Sitting down to eat, I felt like we were really a family. Everything was normal until Lisa spoke up. "So, Mama, does Mr. Mike snore?" I almost dropped my food, surprised by her question. Beth giggled and patted Lisa's hand. "No, honey, he doesn't, and stop being so curious," Beth replied with a playful glance at me. Lisa laughed and said, "Okay, Mama. I'm just glad you won't have to kick him out of bed." Beth gasped and said, "Lisa!" Lisa giggled again and kept eating as if nothing happened. I chuckled, and Beth looked at me, pointing with her fork. "Don't encourage her," she said, then winked and continued her meal. Kids really do grow up fast. I figured Lisa must have overheard something from my nieces about what their parents did on weekends. I just hoped she didn't know any real details about grown-ups. There was plenty of time for her to learn that later. However, it was nice to see that she was comfortable with her mom and me sharing a bed. I felt relieved, hoping she wouldn't overthink it. After breakfast, I saw my girls off and then wandered around until they returned. The week went by with us spending evenings together with Lisa and then going off to our room afterwards. I could feel our bonds growing stronger each day. Finally, like a calf looking for its mother, she opened her mouth and took me in. I let her set the pace until I gave her what she wanted. Then, I returned the favor, showing affection until she was satisfied. As she rested in my arms and drifted off to sleep, I heard her softly say, "Bastard." I chuckled and held her closer. She snuggled into my neck, and I knew she would forgive me soon. On Friday morning, I sent the girls off to work and school, then took my truck to a jeweler in Austin that someone had recommended. I found the perfect ring for her. It was beautiful, but not too flashy, with enough sparkle to show her my love. Next, I reached out to the restaurant where we had eaten with Mel and George. It was a nice place with great food, and I knew they had a private room, which I reserved for Saturday night. Everything was falling into place. I was pretty sure Beth would say yes, but you never know until you ask. That night, when the girls came home, I received my usual hugs and kisses. The ones from Beth were warm and sweet. She didn't mention my conversation with Lisa, and I was relieved. Saturday was a day of swimming and relaxation. So far, Lisa was keeping our secret well. When it was time to get ready to go out, Beth chose the guest room to dress since she hadn't moved her things into my room yet. I went upstairs to prepare. When it was time to leave, the girls came down, Beth in a lovely black dress and Lisa in a pretty outfit they had picked out together. When I saw them, I couldn't help but whistle. "I am a lucky man. I get to take out the two most beautiful girls in the whole state." Both girls laughed. During the drive to the restaurant, Lisa became fidgety with excitement. Beth looked at her, curious about what was going on. Mel and her family were going to meet us there, and as luck would have it, we arrived at the parking lot at the same time. We met outside and walked into the lobby. I spoke to the hostess, who quickly guided us inside. Beth was surprised to find us in a private room and looked at me in question. I kissed her cheek and told her I wanted to have a special evening with those I care about. She didn't say anything more and allowed me to help her to her seat. I had ordered snacks and drinks in advance, and they were served soon after we sat down. We chatted about work and school, enjoying each other's company. I sat at one end of the table with George at the other. To my right was Beth, and next to her sat Mel. The little ones were seated across from them, with Lisa in the seat closest to me. Finally, the moment arrived. We finished our meal and I stood up. "Before we order dessert, I have something to do. Please bear with me." Everyone looked at me curiously except for Lisa, who knew what was coming, and Mel, who probably guessed it too. I reached into my jacket pocket and held the ring so Beth couldn't see it. Then I dropped to one knee in front of her. Beth gasped when she realized what was happening. "Beth, the love of my life, I kneel before you to ask if you would honor me by becoming my wife and sharing our lives together." Tears streamed down Beth's face, and I could see her hands shaking. At first, she just nodded and then said, "Oh yes, Michael, I would love to marry you." "As a sign of my love, I would be honored if you would wear this ring," I said, showing it to her for the first time. "Michael, it's beautiful. Please put it on my finger." I placed it on her finger. It fit perfectly. I stood up and pulled her in for a kiss, and everyone at the table clapped. Then Lisa stood up, walked over, and tugged on my pant leg. I looked down, and she had her arms open, so I bent down and picked her up. First, she hugged me tight, then leaned back. "If you're going to marry my mama, does that mean you will be my daddy?" I was surprised, but quickly responded, "Would you like me to be your daddy?" Without hesitation, she said, "Oh yes, please." I looked at Beth and asked, "And how about you? Would you like me to be her daddy?" Beth was crying and could only nod vigorously. "Well, it looks like we all agree. I would love to be your daddy, sweetheart." Lisa turned to my nieces and shouted, "I've got a daddy! I've got a daddy just like you!" Beth was in tears. I was teary-eyed, and even Mel was crying. The three girls were excited. We returned to our seats and dessert was served. Mel and Beth chatted about weddings while the little girls discussed how they would all be cousins. George and I shared smiles as we looked at the wonderful women in our lives. After dinner, we headed to the parking lot. George came over, shook my hand, and congratulated me. My sister hugged me, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Take care of her, baby brother. She deserves a good man like you. You made the right choice this time." "I will, sis, I will." When we got home, it was late and time for Lisa to go to bed, so Beth and I went to tuck her in. Beth kissed her and Lisa said, "Good night, Mama." I leaned down and kissed her too, and she said, "Good night, Daddy." "Good night, my sweet daughter," I replied, filled with pride. I stroked her hair, then took Beth's hand and led her upstairs. On the way up, Beth chuckled. I didn't think I would ever hear that word come out of her mouth. "You're a good man, Daddy." I smiled and held her hand tightly. I never thought I would hear that about me. It makes me happy. I couldn't ask for a better daughter. I promise to love and protect you as best as I can. I know you will, my love. Now let's get some rest. And we did. My fiancé and I spent time being close and enjoying each other's company. It was very late when we finally fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, feeling happy in our love. On Sunday morning, we woke up after 9. We showered and got dressed. In Lisa's room, we found it empty. She was already awake. Beth went to the kitchen to start breakfast, and I said I would check on Lisa. I heard cartoons coming from the game room and headed that way. When I reached the door, Lisa spotted me and jumped into my arms. I received a big hug, a kiss on the cheek, and a cheerful, "Good morning, Daddy." I kissed her cheek and replied, "Good morning, my sweet daughter." This got me another big hug. I set her down, and we walked to the kitchen. She ran to her mother for a hug and kiss as well. It was hard to believe this was the same scared little girl I had brought home 2 months ago. After breakfast, Beth asked if I could help with cleaning. I agreed, and she invited Lisa to help her. I quickly loaded the dishwasher and went to see what Beth and Lisa were doing. I stepped into the bedroom and saw Beth carrying an armful of clothes, with Lisa following and carrying what she could. I noticed they must have made several trips already. Beth had laid out all the clothes on the bed. I had a large walk-in closet with only a portion filled with my clothes. I also had a big dresser with many empty drawers. Beth turned to me. "Where do I put these?" she asked. Feeling playful, I replied, "I'm not sure they're my size." She laughed and playfully swatted my arm, then pulled me for a kiss and whispered, "You're funny." I chuckled and guided her to the closet, showing her the empty space. I pointed out that I only used a few drawers in the dresser and that the rest were for her. The master bathroom was spacious, and I told her to place her things anywhere she liked, even rearranging my things. She thanked me and sent me downstairs while she and Lisa organized everything. I floated downstairs, happy that my daughter was helping my fiancé settle into our home. An hour and a half later, she came downstairs, satisfied with everything in its place, and plopped into my lap. After a cheerful kiss, she asked, "So, Mr. Beth smiled at her daughter." "I think my daughter likes her daddy," Beth said. "No, Mama, I love my daddy," Lisa replied, giving me a kiss on the cheek. I'm glad, sweetie, because I love Daddy too, Beth said. Life was wonderful. No, it was more than wonderful. I had never felt so happy before. I had a lovely wife, Toby, and a sweet daughter. That night when we went to bed, Beth embraced me warmly. We cuddled closely, and I couldn't help but ask where she learned to be so affectionate. She suddenly looked a bit worried. Michael, please believe me. I've never been with many people, she said. I've only been with 2 other men, and... Beth, it's all right. I know some of what you've been through. You don't have to bring up painful memories, I replied gently. No, Michael. You will be my husband. I want to share everything with you. I met Lisa's father when I was young. We were both inexperienced. We were together only a few times before I found out I was going to have a baby, and it wasn't a good experience. When I told him, he left, and I have never seen him again. I focused on taking care of Lisa, and there was no one else until I met Gary. He seemed nice at first, and though I was hesitant to get close to him, he was patient. The first time we were together was right before my mother passed away. After my mother's death, he convinced me to move in with him. He began to change. When he was sober enough, he would not treat me well. I realized he was only using me. No one had treated me kindly like you do. He asked me to do things I wasn't comfortable with, but I didn't like them and set boundaries. And then you came into my life, my dear man. At first I was nervous around you, but you never did anything to make me uncomfortable. Right after I arrived, your sister mentioned that we had both been hurt by someone. I started to see you differently, and my feelings for you began to grow. The first time we went swimming together, I was shy and felt your gaze. I felt vulnerable, but something changed. I have always been shy about showing my body, even to Gary. But when I first hinted at wanting to be close to you, I realized I wanted to share myself completely. I wanted you to see all of me. You inspire feelings in me that I don't fully understand. The first night we spent together, when I asked you to hold me close, it was because I felt that deep connection. I have never felt like this before, but I really want to be with you. More than anything, I want you to love me and to love you back. I held her close and said, well, my dear, I love you. I will do my best to make you happy. Our wedding was simple. Beth didn't want anything grand. We got married in the gazebo in the yard. Mel was Beth's maid of honor, and George was my best man. Lisa and my nieces were the flower girls. A few of Beth's colleagues and their families came too, along with Jim Henley and his wife. I took my bride to Hawaii for a 2-week honeymoon. The first week was just for us, and for the second week I invited my sister and her family to join us. Having family around was a nice break. My wonderful wife was very caring. Beth kept working for my sister and loved being around all the children. She took a year off after our daughter was born. Yes, now I have 2 daughters to love and cherish. Next week, we'll attend the graduation ceremony for Lisa and Jeannie. They have both grown into lovely young women. I still give a lot of my money to good causes. The rest, I have to encourage Beth to use for things she needs. She didn't have much before and is happy with what she has. I never heard from Jenny again. Maybe she found what she was looking for. As for me, the hurt she caused is gone now, healed by the love of a wonderful woman. I came to Hill Country looking for a new life, and what I found was more than I ever dreamed of. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.